Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your continued support and for tuning in to the mysterious stories here on Paranormal M channel. Tonight's story definitely won't disappoint. And before we begin, leave a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Now it's time to share my own story. Good night, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Hey, I want to tell you about something that happened to me when I was 17, and honestly, even now, I still can't fully explain it. At that point in my life, things at home were really bad, and I ended up staying in a youth shelter. It was in this old heritage house, the kind of place that already feels like it's carrying a lot of history. I wasn't partying, I wasn't using anything, and I wasn't on medication either. I was working long shifts, keeping my head down, and trying to save enough money to eventually get a place of my own. The house had 3 levels, but most people stayed upstairs. That's where the kitchen was, the staff office, the common room, all of that. Downstairs, in the basement, it was quieter. There was a bedroom down there, a laundry room beside it, and this tiny sitting area with a couple of worn couches and an old landline phone. That basement ended up being where I slept. And I need you to understand, the whole shelter felt heavy in general, which maybe makes sense. Everyone there was going through something, but the basement felt different. Not just lonely, different. Like the air down there didn't move the same way. At shelters like that, staff do what they call night checks. A few times every night, they open the bedroom doors just enough to make sure everyone's still there. Because of that, the hallway lights stayed on all night, and they were ridiculously bright. So my roommate and I always kept our doors shut when we slept. She worked late shifts at a fast food place, so whenever she came back, she'd go straight to bed and be completely out. One night, I was dead asleep when I woke up to the sound of the bedroom door creaking open. I could see the hallway lights spilling into the room. At first, I kept my eyes closed, thinking it was just staff doing a check, and they'd close it again in a second. But they didn't. So I opened my eyes and pushed myself up a little. The door was cracked open, but there was nobody there. I looked over at my roommate, thinking maybe she'd just come in, but she was deeply asleep. Hadn't moved. I remember thinking it was weird, but I was exhausted, so I told myself staff must have forgotten to shut the door. Then I felt the bed dip beside me. Not imagined it. Not thought I felt it. I felt someone sit down on the edge of my bed. I shot upright. And that's when I saw her. She looked like a little girl, but not really. It was like she was shaped like a child, but everything about her felt wrong. She was so dark she almost blended into the room, like a figure made out of shadow, except I could still see her clearly. There was something slick and black about her. Almost like her skin or clothes caught the little bit of light in this strange, metallic way. Her hair looked pinned or smoothed back, and her eyes, that's the part I'll never forget. They were this yellowish color, and they were locked on me so intensely that I felt frozen. I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. I rubbed my eyes. She was still there. I thought maybe I was dreaming, so I pinched myself. I touched the wall beside my bed just to ground myself, and it was cold and solid and real. Then she leaned closer and placed her hand on my knee, and I felt it, clear as anything, like a real person touching me. That was the moment pure fear hit me. I can't even dress it up for you. It wasn't just that I was scared. It was this overwhelming certainty that whatever was sitting there meant me harm. The only thought in my head was, she's going to kill me. I didn't know what else to do, so I lay back down, shut my eyes, and counted to 30. I told myself that when I opened them, she'd be gone. She wasn't. The door was still cracked open. I got out of bed, went upstairs, got a glass of water, and stayed awake until daylight. I didn't even try to sleep again until the sun was fully up. A couple of days later, I transferred to another shelter. The night before I left, I went to use the landline in the basement and noticed it wasn't connected anymore. That unsettled me too, because I'd seen another resident using that phone all the time, almost every day. Maybe it meant nothing. Maybe it was broken for a while and I just hadn't noticed. But even now, part of me wonders. A few years later, when I was 21, one of my close friends started working at that same shelter as a youth worker. One night, we were talking about paranormal stuff, and she told me there was one area in that building that made her feel deeply uneasy. She said there was a room down in the basement that she hated passing, and that every time she went near it, she had the urge to hurry by and never look inside. I asked her, was it the room beside the laundry room? And of course, it was. When she said yes, I told her what happened to me. Not long after that, she left that job because she couldn't shake the feeling that something truly awful had happened in that basement. So that's my story. I still don't know exactly what I saw that night. Maybe there's an explanation I'll never find. But deep down, I believe I came face to face with something dark in that room, and I've never forgotten the way it looked at me. I had a dog growing up, a little cockapoo named Maisie. She made it to 14, and we had to let her go peacefully in the spring of 2023. It was one of the hardest days of my life, honestly. She had this ridiculous nickname in our family, Dumpster Mouse, because she would eat absolutely anything she could get her paws on. I'm serious, anything. At one point, she even figured out how to stomp on unopened snack bags until they popped open, which felt less like dog behavior and more like living with a tiny, fuzzy criminal. As she got older, she went blind, and something about that changed her. She got softer, calmer, sweeter in this really quiet way. She spent a lot of her day asleep in sunny spots around the house, especially on the couch. Of course, by then she supposedly needed help getting up there, unless nobody was watching. Then somehow she could jump up just fine on her own. One of her favorite places to nap was in my room, curled up on top of my clean laundry while I was trying to nap too. I used to leave my bedroom door cracked so she could come in if she wanted. Sometimes I'd wake up and realize she'd shoved the door wide open with her nose. And if I forgot and shut it all the way, she'd stand on the other side snuffling under the door and scratching until I let her in. Back then, I'll admit, it drove me crazy sometimes. Now I would give anything to hear it again. A few weeks after she died, I was trying to take a nap in my room with the door completely closed. I was half asleep when I slipped into sleep paralysis, which happens to me sometimes. It's always awful. I had my eyes shut, but I could hear things, feel things, creepy laughter, the sensation of someone tugging at my hair, even that horrible pressure like I couldn't breathe. Usually, if I can force myself to pray out loud, it starts to break. But that time, I didn't have to. I heard this soft, familiar snuffling at the door. Then I heard the door swing open hard enough that the knob hit the wall. A second later, I heard the little click-click of paws on the floor, and then the rustle of fabric, like she was settling herself into the laundry basket the way she always used to. And just like that, I snapped awake. I could move again. Everything stopped. Of course, the second I fully came to, I remembered she was gone. The door was still shut. The room was dark. Nothing had moved. I'm not saying with certainty that my dead dog chased off whatever was happening to me. It could have just been my brain reaching for something safe and familiar when I was terrified. But I also can't completely say it wasn't her. And honestly, I like to believe that maybe the souls of our dogs stay close for a little while. Maybe they linger, checking on us, keeping watch, before moving on to wherever it is we all go. I really hope that's true. worked as a funeral director from 2016 to 2022, and when I first started at that branch, one of the first things people told me was that the place was haunted. Now, I've always been open to that kind of thing, but I'm also the sort of person who wants a real explanation first. I don't jump straight to ghost unless I've exhausted every logical possibility. But honestly, there were a couple of moments in that building that I still can't explain. The first one happened one evening when I was alone in the funeral home. Well, alone except for the people in our care, if that makes sense. I was sitting at the front desk, entering details from a first call into the system, just doing routine paperwork, when I started hearing knocking behind me. And this wasn't just the usual noise from the neighboring businesses or traffic outside. It was deliberate, sharp, repeated, and it was coming from the mortuary. So I got up and went to check. I thought maybe one of the service team had come in through the back entrance with someone new and hadn't told me. But when I got back there was nobody. The rear door was shut, the room was empty, and strangely enough, while I was standing in the mortuary, everything was completely quiet. At that point, I honestly thought maybe someone was messing with me. So I locked the back door properly, set the alarm for the mortuary area, and went back to my desk. The second I sat down again, bang, bang, bang. By then it was around 20 to 5, and all I wanted was for the shift to end so I could go home. I went back toward the mortuary door and called out, asking if anyone was there. Nothing. Then I heard what sounded like footsteps moving across the tiled floor inside. Slow, clear movement. But the alarm never went off. I remember leaning in, pressing my ear against the door, trying to work out what I was hearing. And then something slammed hard against the other side of it. I jumped so badly, I actually felt that cold rush go right through me. You know that feeling where the hairs on the back of your neck stand up before your brain has even caught up? It was exactly that. After that, I stayed planted at the front desk for the rest of the evening and did my absolute best to ignore every knock and bang coming from the back. Then a few weeks later, something else happened. I was in the storage room next to the mortuary, filing away old funeral records. That room had a bit of a reputation too. People used to talk about an apparition they called shoulders and head. Apparently it looked like the upper half of a man and had been seen moving through that room and the hallway leading to the staff bathrooms. A lot of the staff hated going down there, especially alone. And honestly, I understood why. There's something deeply unsettling about using the bathroom when people are casually telling you there might be half a ghost wandering nearby. I'd never seen anything myself, though. And believe me, I'd looked. That day, I wasn't even thinking about ghosts. I was just filing paperwork and quietly complaining to myself because some holiday time I'd requested had been turned down. Then I heard the bathroom door open and swing shut. It was one of those heavy old doors that closes on its own because of the hinge weight, which means it doesn't just drift open for no reason. So I stopped and listened. Nothing. I decided to peek through the little window in the door leading to the bathroom corridor. The hallway beyond was dark, and at first I thought I could make out someone standing at the far end. I figured maybe one of the crew had slipped in there and I just hadn't noticed. But the figure wasn't moving. And then I realized what I was looking at. It wasn't a full person at all. It was just the outline of a head and shoulders. A torso with no legs. Just standing there in the dark. And I swear, the second it became clear to me what I was seeing, it moved. It came straight at the door. One moment it was at the far end of the corridor, and the next, it was lunging toward the window like it meant to hit it. I fell backwards so fast I ended up flat on the floor, yelling every curse word I knew. A colleague came running in to find out what had happened, and when I told him, still shaken and half scrambling to get up, he just looked at me and said, very calmly, "So, you've finally seen him." live in this beautiful old house that was built sometime in the late 1800s, and honestly, it has so much charm. It used to belong to my grandparents, and after they passed, it was left to me. I've always loved this place, but over the years, there have definitely been a few strange things that I can't fully explain. Some of them I've experienced myself, and some were stories people told me. I'm not the kind of person who jumps straight to, "It's paranormal." I always try to rule out every other possibility first. But lately, something has been happening with my little boy that I just can't quite make sense of. My son is about 15 months old, and he's only just starting to talk. He knows a handful of words and uses them pretty consistently. He says things like mama, oma, dog, row for our dog Rudy, yes, no, okay, hi, bye, wawa for water, and nana for banana. He also loves waving and blowing kisses, but usually only at actual people. Well, people and sometimes mannequins, which is honestly adorable. But recently, he started interacting with someone I can't see. He'll just suddenly stop whatever he's doing, turn toward a certain spot in the room, and wave. Then he'll say, "Hi," like he's greeting someone. It's happened all over the house, but most often upstairs, especially near the bedroom and along the hallway. A few weeks ago, we were sitting in the sitting room, and he pointed toward the doorway and said something that sounded like, "Amelia." I asked him to say it again, but he just laughed, pointed toward the same spot, and said, "Hi." That was the first time I really noticed it, and since then, it's been happening a few times a week. The clearest moment happened one evening not long ago. I'd taken him upstairs before bed like I usually do, just to let him play for a bit and wind down while we watched one of his little shows. In the middle of it, he suddenly whipped his head toward the bedroom door, let out this excited squeal, and ran right over to it. He started waving like mad and saying, "Hi, hi, hi," over and over again, to absolutely nothing that I could see. So I asked him what he was doing. He just pointed and laughed. I asked if he was talking to someone, and he said yes. Then I asked who it was, and, very clearly, he said, "Amelia." Clear as day. Later that same night, I was trying to get him settled to sleep. I usually let him cuddle with me in my bed until he gets drowsy, then I move him into his cot. But that night, he was full of energy, bouncing around and refusing to lie down. Then all of a sudden, he looked over my shoulder, right at the empty space behind me, and just froze. He stared for maybe 10 seconds, completely still. Then he quietly said, "Okay," lay down immediately, and settled without a fuss. That part really got to me. A big part of me wants to say this is just normal toddler imagination. He's at that age where he's discovering everything, and maybe he's just inventing things in his own little way. But it's the consistency that throws me. The way he reacts, the same areas of the house, the same name. And what really confuses me is that he barely says words longer than 2 syllables, so hearing him come out with "Amelia" so clearly feels really odd. What makes it even stranger is that this isn't the first story I've heard about a child in this house. My grandmother once thought she caught sight of a little girl in the upstairs hallway too, but said she disappeared down the stairs before she could get a proper look. To be honest, I always tried to explain those stories away. My grandfather may well have been half asleep, and my grandmother had already heard his version of events, so maybe her mind filled in the gaps. But then a friend of mine stayed over once, and later admitted he always felt uneasy in the house because he kept thinking he saw a child-sized shadow darting past the sitting room doorway. The strange thing is, he had no idea about any of the family stories. I'd never told him any of it. And then there's the name itself. My son doesn't know anyone called Amelia. My niece is called Millie, but nobody ever calls her Amelia, and she lives abroad anyway. He's only met her once. I even checked with his childminder to see whether there was another child there with that name, just in case he'd picked it up somewhere. there wasn't. So now I'm left in this odd place where I'm trying to be logical, trying to explain it, and yet I can't really shake the feeling that maybe he is seeing someone, or something. And if he is, whoever she is, she seems gentle. He's never frightened. He always looks happy, curious, almost comforted. Still, it's hard not to wonder who Amelia might be, and why she seems to like the upstairs hallway so much. I was about 12 when we moved into the new house my parents had built. At first, everything should have felt exciting. Fresh walls, new rooms, that sense of starting over somewhere meant just for us. But almost right away, I knew something felt off. I remember telling my mom, "I think this house is haunted." And she just brushed it off, laughed a little, and told me it was my imagination. And honestly, for a while, I tried to believe that too. I read a lot back then. My head was always full of stories, so I told myself maybe I was just making things bigger than they were. But even then, the air in that house felt wrong. Heavy. Like something was always there, just outside your line of sight. I'd walk down the hallway and feel like I was being watched from every corner. Sometimes doors would move on their own. Sometimes I'd hear footsteps overhead, and the dining room light would start swaying like someone had just passed by. I'd see the rocking chair shifting gently when nobody had touched it, and every now and then, the whole room would go cold so suddenly that the hair on my arms would lift. Still, I kept quiet. I didn't want to sound foolish. I just kept telling myself, "It's nothing. It's only in your head." We lived in northeastern Appalachia, and in early summer, that place was almost painfully beautiful. The woods were thick and green, full of birdsong. In the evenings, lightning bugs would blink all across the yard like tiny floating stars. The breeze stayed soft and warm, and the sky would turn that pale blue and pink color right before sunset. Everything outside felt calm, gentle, safe. That's what made what happened feel even stranger. One evening, my parents took my baby sister for a walk. My mom had gotten it in her head that she needed to start exercising more, and she pulled my dad along with her. I stayed behind, which I was very happy about at the time. I was stretched out on the couch with a book, completely absorbed in it, enjoying the rare quiet. The windows were open, and the house felt still. Then I heard music. It was faint at first, soft enough that I couldn't quite place it. I remember pausing and thinking maybe one of my sister's toys had gone off by itself. That happened all the time. So I tried to ignore it and went back to reading. But then I listened again. No, that wasn't a toy. I got up and followed the sound to the bottom of the stairs, and then I heard it clearly. F is for friends who do stuff together. U is for you and me. It was my sister's SpongeBob lamp. Now that lamp wasn't voice activated or anything fancy. You had to physically press a button to make it sing. So I stood there for a second, trying to reason it out. Maybe the batteries were dying. Maybe the button had gotten stuck. So I started up the stairs slowly. N is for anywhere, anytime at all. I reached the top and looked down the hall toward my sister's room. Her door was open, and from where I stood, it felt like the room was just waiting for me. That's the only way I know how to describe it. Down here in the deep blue sea. By then, my heart was pounding. I told myself to stop being ridiculous. It was a lamp, just a stupid children's lamp. So I crept to the doorway and looked inside. There it was, sitting on the little table. Nothing else looked out of place. Then it started again. F is for friends who do stuff together. I remember glancing down at the cord and thinking, well, there you go. That explains it. The lamp wasn't plugged in. Then the song kept going. U is for you and me. So I walked over, picked it up, and turned it over in my hands. N is for anywhere, anytime at all. I opened the battery compartment. There were no batteries inside. None. I just stared at it. I remember checking again because my brain wouldn't accept what I was seeing. But it was empty. No cord in the wall, no batteries in the back. And somehow, in my hands, that lamp had been singing. Then it went quiet. The whole room went quiet. And for one strange second, everything in the house felt completely still. Then every smoke detector in the house started screaming all at once. I don't even remember deciding to run. My body just did it. I tore out of that room, down the hall, down the stairs, and straight out the front door as fast as I could. I was gasping, half crying, completely out of my mind with fear. And the second I got outside, the alarms stopped. Just stopped. The house went silent again. My parents were walking back up the driveway right then, and my mom rushed over asking what happened. I tried to explain it between breaths, stumbling over every word. I told her about the lamp, about the missing batteries, about the alarms. I'll never forget the look on her face. Her eyes widened, and for once, she didn't laugh. She didn't tell me it was my imagination. She just went quiet. That night, I lay awake in bed staring toward my doorway, waiting for sleep to come. I was still shaken up, still listening to every little sound. Then I heard a creak. I focused on the door. It was moving. At first, just swaying a little. Then more. Back and forth. Back and forth. Faster and faster until it was swinging enough to make the hinges squeal into the dark hallway. From down the hall, my mother called out, annoyed, "Annie, stop swinging your door." And I said, "Mom, I'm not touching it." After that, there was only silence. And that was the moment I knew, without a doubt, that it had never been my imagination at all. You know, I've lived in this city almost my whole life. For more than 40 years, my family's apartment has been on one of the lower floors of a tall high-rise, and from my bedroom window, I've always had this same strange view. Smaller houses below, a stretch of rooftops, and in the distance, one towering building that always stood out from everything else. When I was a kid, maybe 8 or 9, I started noticing something odd in one of the top floor windows of that building. Late at night, a light would come on, and every so often a shadow would pass by the window. Not just once either. It kept happening over and over, night after night, month after month. Sometimes it looked like the figure was walking across the room. Other times it almost seemed like it was moving in some kind of circle, like it was pacing around the same object again and again. Back then, I was way too young to make sense of it, but it really got under my skin. I remember going to a neighbor's apartment a few floors higher just to get a better angle. Even then, it was still too far away to understand clearly. It was just this distant little scene playing out in the same window, over and over, like something I wasn't supposed to fully figure out. At one point, a few friends and I actually went over to that building ourselves. We were convinced there had to be some practical explanation, maybe a maintenance room, maybe some company office, maybe machinery or an elevator system. But when we finally got there, it turned out to be just an ordinary private apartment. Nothing unusual about it at all, at least not from the outside. Of course, this was over 30 years ago. There were no smartphones, no zoom cameras, nothing like that. I even tried using binoculars once, but they didn't help much. Eventually, I just got used to it. The mystery sort of faded into the background of life. I stopped paying attention, moved on, and after enough time passed, I barely thought about it anymore. Then recently, after about 35 years, I came back home for a visit, and the first thing that hit me was that it was still happening. That same top-floor room, that same late-night light, that same movement behind the window. Only this time, I had better technology with me. I used my phone with a telescopic lens and finally managed to get a closer look. The footage isn't amazing. It's nighttime, huge zoom, lots of distance. But it's clear enough for me to feel certain that what I've been seeing all these years is an actual person moving around inside that room. Near the upper part of the window, you can make out what looks like a chandelier. In the middle, there's this figure that seems to be circling around something, almost like they're walking the same path again and again. And honestly, that's what makes it even stranger to me. Because if this has really been going on for 35 years, maybe even longer, then whoever that person is must have been doing some version of this for decades. That means they'd have to be older now, maybe well over 50, maybe much more. So I keep wondering what kind of explanation makes sense. Is it some kind of illness? A habit? A private ritual? Something emotional or psychological? I don't really believe it's anything paranormal, at least not as my first guess, but I can't deny that after seeing it for so many years, it still feels eerie. What gets me most is how consistent it is. It happens almost every night. And because of that, I'm thinking there's a good chance I can record more of it and maybe catch some small detail that finally explains everything. I want to share something personal with you, and I do it with a lot of respect. I have indigenous roots, and I know there are people in the community who feel strongly that certain stories and experiences should stay within the circle. I truly understand that, and I respect it. At the same time, I believe some of these experiences carry real meaning, and when they stay hidden, people outside the culture never get the chance to understand the beauty, depth, and spiritual richness that exists in this way of life. I'm sharing this because I know I'm not the only one who has gone through things like this. Maybe someone listening has had an experience they've never been able to explain. Maybe they've felt alone with it. My hope is that this helps someone feel seen. Even if you don't take these experiences literally the way I do, maybe you can still hear them as something meaningful, something symbolic, something that has shaped lives and traditions for generations. I've been part of many sweat lodge ceremonies over the years, including a few from different tribal traditions. For anyone unfamiliar, a sweat lodge is a small enclosed structure, almost like a low tent or dome, where heated stones are placed in a center pit. Water is poured over them, sometimes with cedar or sweetgrass, and the whole lodge fills with intense heat and steam. It's usually done in complete darkness. The ceremony leader guides everyone through prayer, song, and intention. The focus is often on healing, praying for others, connecting with the earth, and opening yourself spiritually. One thing I've experienced more than once, and I've heard similar stories from others too, is seeing small floating lights in the darkness. Orbs, almost. They seem to drift in the air while we're praying and singing. I was taught that these are spirits, helpers, joining us and listening. And I should say this too, there are protections in ceremony. The intention is to invite only those spirits that come in a good way. I've also heard voices that shouldn't have been there. I've heard women singing with us when only men were inside the lodge and no one else was around. Another time, I heard what sounded like a whole group of men singing when there were only 2 of us present. I was told those were ancestors joining in. But the experience that has stayed with me the most is one that became physical. I was in the lodge with only the ceremony leader, a man I'll call Mika. It was just the 2 of us. Between us was the pit of hot stones, and beside that was a large metal pot of steaming water. It was dark, hot, and quiet, except for his singing and the beat of his hand drum. If you know that kind of drum, you know both hands are occupied. One hand holds it, the other plays it. About halfway through the second song, something started striking my leg. Not lightly. Not like a brush or a tap. I mean hard enough that I immediately thought Mika was trying to get my attention. But that didn't make sense. He was still singing, still drumming, and the sound of his voice hadn't shifted at all. He hadn't moved. Then I realized whatever was touching me wasn't just making contact randomly. It was hitting my leg in rhythm with the drum. That's when I felt a wave of uneasiness come over me. For a moment, I was tense. But then I remembered what I had been taught. Only good spirits are welcomed into that space. So I took a breath, stayed calm, and let the moment happen. And just like that, when the song ended, it stopped. The ceremony continued as normal. Nothing else happened. But afterward, once we were outside, I asked him, casually at first, "You weren't tapping my leg in there, were you?" Then his face changed a little, like he understood exactly what I meant. He told me I handled it well. He said someone else had a similar experience not long before, and they panicked and rushed out of the lodge in fear. I told him I stayed calm because I remembered his teachings. Whatever had been there, I believed it had come in a good way. We talked a little about what it might have meant, but honestly, I'll leave that part open. I know stories like this can make some people uncomfortable. I know not everyone will believe them, but for me, these moments were real, and they changed the way I understand prayer, presence, and the unseen world. So I'm sharing this with you because maybe you've had something happen too, in any setting, spiritual or otherwise, that you still carry with you. And maybe hearing this reminds you that you're not alone. You know, back in college, I moved into this little 2-bedroom apartment with my best friend Mason and my girlfriend at the time. It wasn't some creepy old house or anything like that, just a normal apartment in a regular building. Nothing about it looked unusual. But almost right away, odd things started happening. At night, all three of us would hear footsteps when we were in our rooms. Sometimes there'd be coughing or sneezing, like someone else was in the apartment with us. At first, we didn't think too much of it. We figured it had to be noise from the other units in the building. We were on the top floor, so it couldn't have been anyone above us, but there were a few apartments in the building, so we just shrugged it off. Then one morning, I was getting ready to leave for work and realized I needed to grab something from my car. I left the apartment door unlocked and ran downstairs. I was gone maybe a minute, tops. When I came back, the door was deadbolted from the inside. I just stood there for a second, confused. I knocked. No answer. I checked my pockets for my keys and realized they were gone. I went back to my car, looked everywhere, came back, knocked again. Still nothing. At that point, I was panicking because I was already running late. So, in a decision that only made sense because I was 20, I climbed up the side of the building, got onto my balcony, and went in through the sliding glass door. The second I stepped inside, I saw my keys sitting on the table, and the TV was on. I remember calling out, thinking my roommate or my girlfriend had to be messing with me, because what else could it be? But the apartment was completely empty. Nobody was there. The first time, I told myself it was weird. By the third time something like that happened, I started feeling like, okay, something is seriously off here. There was another moment in that apartment that I still can't fully explain. We had this utility closet in the hallway with a sliding door, and we always kept it open because that door didn't get in the way. Inside, I had some stuff stacked near the water heater, plastic bins, a cooler, random storage things. One evening, after we'd already started suspecting the place had some kind of energy to it, all three of us were sitting there in the living room. And then, at the exact same time, we all caught movement out of the corner of our eyes. That cooler, this heavy cooler that had been sitting on top of the stacked bins a few feet off the ground, came flying out of the closet. It slammed into the wall with this loud bang. All three of us turned and looked, and I swear to you, that cooler just hung there for what felt like 3 or 4 seconds before it finally dropped to the floor. We didn't say much. We just got up and went outside. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. We were all shaken. Not long after that, I was at work when Mason texted me and said he was hearing footsteps all around his room. I tried to keep it casual and told him maybe he should step outside for a bit, get some air. A few minutes later, he called me, and I could hear in his voice that he was terrified. He told me the footsteps were still happening while he was on the phone with me. He said papers had started flying off his desk. I didn't see it myself, obviously, but hearing him like that made it feel very real. I just kept trying to calm him down, telling him he was okay, that whatever was happening wasn't going to hurt him. Eventually, he said it stopped. Then, sometime later, Mason's mom came by the apartment. I told her a little about what we'd been experiencing, not even everything, just enough to explain why we were uneasy there. And she responded so calmly, like this was not surprising at all. That was one of those moments where everything kind of clicked into place, whether rationally or not. After that, I ended up smudging the apartment, just hoping to shift whatever was there. And honestly, things did seem to quiet down. Or maybe I just got used to it. That's possible too. I remember having friends over later on, and something would happen. A noise, movement, something subtle, and I'd barely react. Meanwhile, they'd be staring at me like, "Did you hear that?" Or, "Did you see that?" And I'd just say, "Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it." Since moving out, I've had a few other experiences here and there. Mostly things getting knocked or flipped in ways that felt strange, like something invisible had hit them from underneath. But those moments still followed the normal rules of physics once they started moving. That cooler didn't. That's the part I can never fully explain. 3 of us saw it. It didn't just fall. It seemed to pause there in the air before dropping. And look, I know there could be rational explanations. I've thought about gas leaks, stress, suggestion, all of that. I'm open to those possibilities. But I'm also open to the idea that maybe some experiences just don't fit neatly into the usual boxes. I still think about that apartment sometimes, and honestly, I'd really love to hear from anyone who's gone through something similar, or anyone who has a thoughtful, respectful take on what might have been happening. So, to give you a little background, my family and I have been renting this same house for nearly 12 years now, and for most of that time, it just felt like any other home. Nothing strange, nothing unsettling. But about 8 months ago, odd little things started happening, and ever since then, we've been trying to make sense of it. The first thing happened early one morning. I'd just gotten out of bed and was walking down the hallway to the bathroom to get ready for work when I heard this soft rattling noise. It caught my attention right away. I opened the bathroom door, and there on the floor was a spray bottle of cleaner, shaking hard like something had just smacked into it. But what really got me was the way it stopped. It didn't wobble less and less like you'd expect. It just stopped. All at once, like somebody had put a hand on it. The second incident is the one that still bothers me the most. I was hanging a framed picture in the living room. It wasn't huge, maybe around 12 by 16 inches, and I'd set it up carefully with 2 nails so it was balanced and secure. Then I went into the kitchen, which shares a wall with that room, just to straighten a few things up. I couldn't have been gone more than 10 minutes. When I came back, that picture was on the other side of the room. Not just on the floor under where it had been hanging, but all the way past the couch and beyond the coffee table. It had landed far enough away that it made no sense at all. I never heard it fall, and even if it had slipped loose, there's just no reasonable way it could have traveled that far. We actually tried recreating it afterward, over and over, just to prove there had to be some normal explanation, but we couldn't make it happen. Then there's the basement. Our washer and dryer are down there, and honestly, they're ancient. The dryer is so bad we usually have to run every load at least 2 or 3 times. We buy our detergent in those giant warehouse-sized containers and keep them on the back edge of the dryer. There's a raised lip there, so they've always stayed put. But in the last few months, 2 separate detergent containers, both still mostly full, ended up on the floor shattered. And I mean shattered, not cracked open, broken apart in pieces like they'd been thrown down hard. The newest thing was a lot smaller, but still weird enough to stick with me. We have one of those drying racks where we set rinsed dishes and silverware before loading them into the dishwasher. A few days ago, we were in the bedroom when we heard a loud clatter, exactly like a handful of forks and spoons had hit the floor. We both rushed out, thinking something had broken in the dining room or maybe fallen in the kitchen. But when we got there, everything was completely normal. Nothing on the floor, nothing out of place, nothing missing. It was like the sound happened for no reason at all. Through all of this, we've mostly joked around about having a ghost. We haven't made a huge deal out of it. We do have a little daughter, she turned 2 recently, and she started playing peekaboo with someone she calls Ghosty. I really think she probably just picked up the word from hearing us joke around, and kids that age can turn anything into a game. Still, I figured it was worth mentioning. What gets me is that we lived here for over a decade with absolutely nothing like this happening, and then, suddenly it starts out of nowhere. It doesn't feel threatening. I'm not scared to be here. If anything, it just feels strange, random, like something shifted and we don't know why. Other than that, nothing big changed in our lives around that time. We didn't bring anything secondhand into the house. Nobody passed away, and there wasn't any major family event that might explain the sudden shift in energy. So I keep coming back to the same question. What else could this be? And if there really is something here with us, how do we make sure we stay on friendly terms with it? Honestly, I don't think this was ever just some random ghost story. For as long as I can remember, there's been this presence around my family. My grandparents have land out in another state, and everybody who's spent real time there seems to agree that place holds something. Maybe more than one thing. My grandmother used to say that somewhere back in our family line, one of the women before her was believed to be a witch. I never knew what to do with that information, but it always stuck with me. What makes this harder to explain is that this presence never seemed tied to just one house. It felt like it moved, followed. For a long time, I had this weird feeling it traveled through certain objects, especially TVs, maybe mirrors too. My family never really thought much about stuff like that. They'd sleep with screens glowing in the room, mirrors uncovered, all of it. And then the sightings started lining up. My cousin saw the same figure years ago outside my grandparents' place, near the back of the property. Later, in a completely different state, my sister saw her sitting on my bed. She was hysterical, crying so hard she wouldn't even come into the room. She described the same girl my cousin had. Long black hair hanging in her face, a pale dress, blood all over her, this messy, almost grungy look. That was the moment I realized this thing wasn't just in my head. But really, it started way before that. When I was little, maybe 6 or so, I was already noticing strange things. Small things at first. I remember staring at a poster on my wall one night. I looked away, and right after that I heard it shake, like someone had brushed past it. I didn't see it move, not directly, but I heard it clearly. And more than that, I always felt watched. I never felt alone. Looking back, I was a scared kid dealing with a lot, and I think that made me vulnerable. Even then, I never felt like it was attached only to me. I think I got the worst of it, but it always felt connected to my family too, especially once my cousin started seeing her. When we moved again, things got heavier. I had to sleep alone, and deep down, I knew I wasn't alone at all. The fear got so bad that I started spiraling, imagining worst-case scenarios every night. Nobody really believed me. Not fully. Even after my sister saw her, everyone just sort of let it fade into the background. Then one night, something happened that changed everything for me. I woke up and saw a girl standing in my doorway. I assumed it was my younger sister trying to come into my room because she was scared, so I told her she could come in. I didn't think twice. I thought I was being kind. But after a moment, she was just gone. So I got up to check on my sister, and there she was, fast asleep in her own bed the whole time. That shook me in a way I can't really explain. That was when I understood I had invited something in without realizing it. Not long after that, I started getting sleep paralysis. The first time was when I was in high school. I'd accidentally fallen asleep before school and woke up unable to move. I kept my eyes shut because I knew immediately something was wrong. Then I heard this awful sound, like an elderly woman groaning in this low, unnatural way. It didn't sound human. Ever since then, I've made it a rule. If I wake up paralyzed, I do not open my eyes. Ever. I don't want to know what's standing there. I don't want to see her. Around that same time, I had another experience I still can't fully explain. I remember seeing what looked like a shadowy girl sitting on my chest, pressing down on me, smiling in this horrible way. I blinked, and she was gone. Maybe I was half dreaming. Maybe not. I still don't know. Now, to be fair, that property always felt crowded with spirits. I can't say for certain every single thing there was her, but some of it felt personal, especially that box with the knife. Something about that moment never sat right with me. Later on, some relatives were staying in a camper near another house on the same land. They weren't exactly great people, and I'll admit, I wasn't heartbroken to hear they got unsettled out there. They said they heard two different voices. One time, they heard what sounded like a child calling for her mother, even though none of the kids were around. Another time, they heard a voice snap, clear as day, "Get out!" And after all that, I moved again, back to the state where I live now. By then, I knew. I knew something had followed me more than once. At that point, I couldn't just write it off as stress or imagination anymore. If I left haunted places and it still came with me, then something was real. Over time, I learned the less attention I gave it, the quieter things got. Ignoring it seemed to starve it. Acknowledging it seemed to feed it. I'm not perfect at that, though. Sometimes I still talk about it with friends or my partner, and every now and then, it feels like it reminds me it's listening. One of the strangest recent moments was actually kind of funny. A friend was sleeping over, and I had some soft videos playing on the TV. The remote was sitting on the desk beside me. It was early in the morning, that weird hour when everything feels thin and unsettled. Out of nowhere, the remote got smacked right off the desk. No one touched it. I just sat there thinking, okay, I guess she hates relaxing videos. So that's where I am with it now. I still don't know exactly what she is. I don't know whether she can truly hurt anyone. I bruise easily and I'm clumsy, so when I find marks on myself, I can't honestly say what caused them. There was one time my brother thought he'd been scratched, but then he talked himself into a more logical explanation. And maybe he was right. But after everything that's happened, across different homes, different years, different people seeing the same woman, I can't convince myself it's nothing. At this point, I mostly live with it by not feeding it, by acting like it isn't there. But deep down, I still want answers. I still want to know what's been following me and why it seems tied to my family. And more than anything, I want it gone. So back then, my friend Jace and I had this ritual. Almost every Friday and Saturday night, we'd head out toward Los Angeles with no real plan, just chasing the night and seeing where it took us. We'd party, get ourselves into weird little adventures, lose track of time, and somehow always end up finding our way back home just before sunrise. One night, we ended up way out past the city, somewhere in the hills in one of the towns surrounding LA. We found this quiet pull-off on a mountain road, the kind with guardrails lining the edge so cars don't go over the side. It was dark out there, really dark. To the right of the car was this small rise with a few trees. The road stretched off to our left, and straight ahead was the guardrail and just blackness beyond it. We parked, settled in, and started doing what we usually did. We had music going. We were smoking, laughing, talking. My friend had taken Molly for the first time that night, and I'd done it before, so I felt more prepared for it than he was. Jace was already the kind of person who could fill any silence without even trying. Super outgoing, always talking, always animated. I was quieter, more the type to sit back and take everything in. So while he kept going on about whatever was on his mind, I was mostly listening, half focused on the music, half looking out into the dark. And that's when I noticed something. At first, I honestly couldn't make sense of it. I had to lean forward and squint through the windshield. There was this shape out there, just beyond the guardrail. It looked like a person, or something shaped like one. I remember freezing as I watched it seem to climb up from the cliffside and over the rail. What made it so unsettling was the way it moved. It wasn't solid and clear the whole time. It would appear in these strange flashes, almost like impressions. I'd see it in one position, then it would fade, and when it showed up again, it was closer. First I saw it at the rail. Then I saw a leg coming over. Then it was fully on our side. I was just sitting there, trying to process what I was seeing, while Jace was beside me in the passenger seat, deep in his own world, still talking non-stop, totally unaware. I asked him if he saw it, but he barely registered what I said. He just kept rambling, happy as could be, while I sat there getting more and more freaked out. The figure kept getting closer in those same strange intervals. Fade out, reappear closer. Fade out, reappear closer, until I realized that the next time it showed up, it was probably going to be right next to my window. That was it for me. I completely lost it. I yelled, dropped down in my seat, and just hid there, heart pounding. I was absolutely terrified. I wanted to leave so badly, but I wasn't in any state to drive yet, so all I could do was sit there and wait it out while my friend was still having the time of his life, completely oblivious. I stayed like that for what felt like forever. Eventually, after maybe an hour or so, I worked up the nerve to slowly look up again. And when I did, that's the part I still can't explain. There weren't just one or two figures outside anymore. There were dozens of them. They were all around the car, just drifting in and out the same way, appearing like shadows in pieces, then fading, then returning somewhere else nearby. But the strange thing was, they didn't feel aggressive. They weren't banging on the car or trying to scare us. They were just there, walking around casually, almost like people passing by in a public square, completely unbothered by us. Eventually, the effects wore off enough for me to drive, and we got out of there fast. Neither of us ever figured out exactly where that spot was. Somewhere out there in the hills near LA, I guess. And honestly, even now, I still think about it. I've wanted to go back in the daytime just to see what that place really looked like. But whatever happened that night, it's still the wildest thing I've ever experienced. I've always been the kind of person who rolls my eyes at paranormal stories. Honestly, I still am. Whenever I read those accounts about shadowy figures in the corner of someone's bedroom or some evil presence lurking in the dark, my first instinct is to call nonsense. Most of the time, I assume people are exaggerating, making things up for attention, or going through something psychological. I trust evidence. I trust reason. I trust things that can be tested and explained. But there's one experience I went through years ago that still unsettles me, because no matter how many times I replay it in my head, I can't explain it. This happened maybe 7 years ago, on a Sunday afternoon. I was staying with my girlfriend at the time. She's my wife now, but I'll call her Lena here. She lived in a small apartment with her friend, whom I'll call Marina. Marina had a cat, and the place itself wasn't big at all. 2 bedrooms sat at the back, side by side. In the middle, there was a living room, then the kitchen and bathroom, and near the front door, there was this little entry space and a narrow hallway. That afternoon, Lena and I were in her room with the door open, just hanging out and watching something on her laptop. Everything felt normal, quiet, comfortable. Then, all at once, apartment. I still can't describe it properly. It sounded human, but wrong somehow. We couldn't make out any words, just the sound of it, low and drawn out, almost like a moan or a call. It came from the little foyer near the entrance, far from where we were. I remember both of us freezing instantly. For a second, I thought maybe Marina had said something, but then her cat ran toward the sound, and right after that, Marina called the cat back, from her own room. Her voice was clearly coming from the back of the apartment, nowhere near where that other voice had come from. Lena and I just looked at each other, both of us pale, and then we stepped out and asked Marina if she'd heard it too. She had. That was the moment the whole mood changed. You know that feeling when the air suddenly doesn't feel right anymore? That's exactly what it was. Still, we tried to brush it off. Later we went out for food, had some drinks, talked ourselves into believing it had to be a neighbor or some random noise, and by the end of the night, we'd mostly convinced ourselves to let it go. But that was only the beginning. A few days later, Marina mentioned hearing movement in the kitchen when no one else was home. Then a night came that I still think about more often than I'd like. Lena and I were asleep when the bed suddenly started shaking hard enough that both of us jolted awake thinking it was an earthquake. We lived in an area where tremors happened often, so that was our immediate reaction. We jumped out of bed and moved instinctively, waiting for the rest of the shaking. Nothing. The room was still. The apartment was still. The whole building was still. We checked online, checked local posts, looked for any report of a tremor. Nothing. No one else had felt a thing, and yet both of us knew the bed had been shaken violently. There was no doubt about it. We got back into bed eventually, but neither of us really slept. The whole room felt wrong, heavy somehow, like we weren't alone. After that, whatever was happening seemed to focus on Lena. She was terrified, and the worst part was, I could see she wasn't performing or dramatizing it. She was genuinely scared. It didn't seem to matter where we were, sitting together, lying in bed, walking down the street. Every so often, she would feel something put a hand on her, as if some unseen presence had attached itself to her. We got desperate enough that we decided to leave for a while and go to her parents' place in another state. Lena left first, and I planned to join her a few days later after sorting out a few things. While she was there, she called me sounding relieved for the first time in a while. She said nothing had happened since she arrived. No touches, no fear, no strange feelings. It felt like maybe distance had broken whatever this was. Then came the day I was supposed to fly out. I was alone in the apartment, packing my suitcase, when I suddenly felt this overwhelming presence in the room. I know how vague that sounds, but that's exactly how it felt. Like something was standing there with me, specifically in the space between the bed and the closet. The atmosphere changed in an instant. My whole body went on alert. I tried to ignore it and pack faster. I grabbed my bag, turned toward the nightstand, and that's when I saw it. The lamp beside the bed had one of those shades made of hanging beads. Right in front of me, the strands moved in a smooth ripple, as though an invisible hand had slowly passed through them. I just stared. I looked straight at the window, hoping it was open, hoping there was a draft, hoping for anything ordinary. The window was shut. There was no breeze, no fan, nothing. And yet I had just watched those beads move with intention. To this day, that is still the most frightening thing I have ever seen. Not because it was loud or violent, but because it looked deliberate, controlled, like something unseen had wanted me to know it was there. I ran out of that apartment in a panic. I barely remember how I got to the airport. My legs felt weak, like they didn't belong to me. Even now, years later, I can still picture that lampshade moving. When I finally reached Lena, things felt calmer for a couple of days. We started to breathe again. We started to think maybe it really had ended. Then one night, sometime around 1 in the morning, the blender in her parents' kitchen turned on by itself. That sound hit us like a punch. Whatever had been happening hadn't stayed behind. And after that, Lena started feeling those touches again, on her arms, her legs, her back. Different house, different city, same nightmare. At that point, we finally told her parents everything. Her mother listened and then told us to pray every night and light a candle, to help guide whatever this was away from us. She also suggested leaving out a blank sheet of paper and a pencil, asking the presence what it wanted. We never did the paper. That felt like crossing a line neither of us was willing to cross. But we did pray, even though neither of us was particularly religious. We lit the candle. We followed the ritual because by then we were scared enough to try anything. Then, one night, not long after, I had what I can only describe as a kind of sleep paralysis. I was aware of the room. I could feel Lena beside me in bed, and at the foot of the bed, I saw a figure standing up out of the darkness. It was a tall woman dressed in black, just watching us. Now, I'll be honest, that part happened in that strange space between sleep and waking, so I can't swear it was real in the same way I can swear about the voice, the shaking bed, or the moving lamp. My mind could have shaped all that fear into an image. I know that. But what haunts me is this. After that night, everything stopped. Just like that. And I still don't know what to do with any of it. I wish I had proof. I wish I'd recorded the lamp or caught something on video or had anything concrete to point to. But when something like that happens, your first thought isn't documentation. Your first thought is survival. It's getting out. It's making it stop. Maybe written down like this, it doesn't sound as intense as it felt. But living through it was something else entirely. It was disorienting, terrifying, and deeply personal in a way that's hard to explain. I'm still a skeptic. I'm still not someone who wants to believe in ghosts or entities or anything supernatural. But every now and then, usually late at night when the room is too quiet, I still remember that feeling. And I still catch myself hoping she never comes back. I need to tell you about something that happened last night, because honestly, I still can't shake it. A friend of mine, Arav, and I had gone to a salon in Sadashivanagar for his haircut. We wrapped up sometime around 8:15, and afterward, we decided to walk to this little Momo cart near my dance studio on Bell Road. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal, maybe half an hour on foot, tops. I know that side of town pretty well, and I had maps open the entire time, so I wasn't worried. Right outside the salon, there was this road that looked calm and kind of beautiful in a strange way. It was lined with trees, really quiet, and seemed to head in the same direction we needed to go. So we looked at each other and thought, why not just take the shortcut? The second we stepped onto that road, something in me felt wrong. You know that feeling when your gut starts warning you before your brain catches up? That's exactly what it was. I told Arav more than once, I don't like this. Something about this road feels off. But we laughed it off and kept going because it sounded silly at the time. We walked straight for a while, turned once, then kept moving ahead. And after that, everything started to feel strange. We somehow got turned around more than once, even though I was checking maps the whole time. The app wasn't behaving normally either. It kept lagging, spinning, and showing weird directions that didn't make sense. The road itself was bizarre, way too wide, almost empty, with these massive trees on both sides that blocked out everything. And not a single streetlight seemed to be working. What really got to me was that it was clearly a residential neighborhood, but every house looked asleep. No lights on, no sounds, no people talking, no TVs, nothing. And this was Bangalore, at night. Not the kind of place that usually feels that dead. We did see a few people here and there, but even that felt unsettling. I don't know how to explain it properly. They just didn't feel fully present. It was like they were there, but not really there. At one point, I checked Ola and Uber because I was starting to think maybe we should just leave the area altogether. And there was nothing. No autos, no cabs, nothing available at all. Not even the usual high demand message. It just felt like we had dropped off the map. Then it stopped being just a weird feeling and started affecting me physically. Out of nowhere, I got freezing cold. Not normal cold, the kind that gets inside you. My hands were icy, and I started shivering hard. The weirdest part is that the weather wasn't even cold, and I'm usually the person who overheats easily. Arav was completely fine. Not cold at all. Then we passed this one house, and I swear something about it made me stop walking. I just looked at it and said, "That place is not right." He laughed and asked if I wanted to go closer, and I immediately said no. Absolutely not. Right after that, this wave of exhaustion hit me. It was so sudden. My legs felt unbelievably heavy, like I'd been awake for 2 days straight. I remember thinking, why do I feel like all my energy just got pulled out of me? Still, we kept walking, just trying to get back to Bell Road and get out of there. And then I looked up. We were standing right back in front of the salon, the exact same spot we had started from. Same storefront, same place. And the thing is, we hadn't been looping around, at least not in any way that made sense. We thought we had been walking forward the whole time. The moment we were back near the salon, everything changed. Autos suddenly started showing up in the apps again, like nothing had happened. We found one almost immediately and got in without even thinking twice. When I got home, I took a hot shower and got into bed under 2 blankets, but I still couldn't warm up. For hours, I was cold to the touch. I didn't have a fever. I wasn't sick. I just felt empty, drained in this weird, hollow way I can't really describe. It honestly felt like that road took something out of me. And that's the part I can't stop thinking about. I've always felt like I pick up on things other people miss. Pretty much everyone close to me says the same thing about me, that I'm unusually intuitive, sometimes to a degree that even unsettles them a little. And honestly, I get why they say that. I've had these strange experiences for as long as I can remember, knowing something is about to happen before it does, getting déjà vu all the time. feeling dizzy or nauseous in old places with heavy energy, having vivid spiritual dreams, sleep paralysis, and a few encounters I still can't explain in any normal way. So I guess I'm sharing this because I'm looking for insight, maybe advice, maybe just to hear from someone who understands this better than I do. First, I want to be clear. I do know what sleep paralysis is. I've been through it more than once. I also have nightmares pretty regularly, at least a couple every week, and that's been true for most of my life. So none of that is new to me. And beyond that, I've always felt like I have some kind of extra sensitivity, not just emotionally, but physically too. Sometimes in places that are old, tragic, or supposedly haunted, I'll get this wave of nausea or this cold, electric chill through my body. It's hard to explain unless you felt it yourself. I also pay a lot of attention to animals because I really believe they notice things before we do. I have 2 cats, and my partner has a dog named Remy, who was in the room with me that night. This happened before work. I work overnight shifts, so I'd laid down for a nap and set my alarm for 10:15 p.m. The bedroom door was shut, so the cats were outside, and Remy was in the room with me. I don't think I slept deeply for very long, maybe half an hour, maybe a little more. Most of the time I was in that in-between state, where you're not fully asleep but not fully awake either. When my alarm went off, I turned it off and decided to rest for another minute. That's when I noticed Remy standing at the edge of the bed, just staring at me, completely still. I called him over, trying to get him to come cuddle next to me, because that's normally exactly what he'd do. He's ridiculously affectionate. He loves everyone, wants to be close constantly, and is one of the clingiest dogs I've ever met. But he wouldn't move. I called him again, in that happy voice people use with dogs, trying to reassure him. I said, "Come here, Remy, it's okay." And after I said that, he finally started moving toward me, but not normally. He dropped low and started inching forward in that nervous little crawl dogs do when they're scared or unsure. Like he wanted to come to me, but something was seriously wrong. At first I tried to brush it off. I thought maybe he was just acting weird. Maybe I startled him somehow. So I closed my eyes for a second. And then he started growling. By that point, I was fully awake. I had already turned off my alarm. I was conscious, aware, and just lying there with my eyes shut. Remy's growl got deeper and louder, and it wasn't playful. It wasn't the kind of sound he makes with toys or when he sees something outside. This was different. Defensive. Warning level different. Normally, if a dog growls, you talk to them. You soothe them. You say, "It's okay, calm down." But in that moment, something in me told me not to speak. I can't explain why. I just knew not to. So I stayed still. I opened my eyes, and I was staring straight at the wall, still shaking. It felt like something was being pulled out of me through my head. That's the closest description I can give. It was terrifying for the first few seconds, and then I remember telling myself over and over, "You need to snap out of this. Wake up. It's okay. Wake up." After maybe 10 seconds, it stopped. Just like that. The pressure was gone. The shaking stopped. Remy went quiet and immediately came over to me, climbing all over me like he was trying to comfort me. And I just lay there feeling sick to my stomach. Really sick. The whole room felt wrong after that. I couldn't stay in the bedroom by myself, and honestly, I didn't even want to stay in the apartment, so I left for work early just to get out of there. I've gone over every possible explanation in my mind. I know how sleep paralysis feels, and this didn't feel the same. Mostly because I was already awake, and also because Remy was reacting the whole time. If I had just been dreaming or half-dreaming, that would be one thing. But he was clearly seeing or sensing something too, and he wasn't reacting with confusion. He was reacting like he was trying to defend me. That's what I can't get past. I've never had seizures. I've never had any medical issue like that. And maybe there is some explanation I haven't considered, but I can't shake the feeling that whatever happened was not normal. So that's why I'm telling this story. Because if this does sound paranormal, or darker than that, I really want to know what you would do next. I've thought about cleansing the apartment, doing some kind of protection ritual, or at the very least, making sure whatever was there doesn't feel welcome again. I just know that what happened felt real, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. How have you all been lately? Still having trouble sleeping? I'm really excited to be here sharing my paranormal experiences to help you relax and get a better night's sleep. If you enjoy this kind of content, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos. And thank you so much for sending in your own paranormal experiences. Now, get into bed, turn on your nightlight, and let's listen together. So this was maybe 6 years ago now, back when my family and I were living in this little apartment that had 2 balconies, one facing the street and another in the back. And the back balcony was the one that messed with me. Behind our building, there was this odd stretch of land that didn't feel like it belonged in the middle of a neighborhood. It was overgrown and messy, and you could see the broken down remains of what looked like an old house, just chunks of walls and rubble. And off to one side, there were these stone shapes half sunk into the ground that honestly looked like a tiny, neglected graveyard. Not dramatic, not movie style, just wrong in this quiet, forgotten way. At the time, I wasn't someone who believed in ghosts, like, at all. I'd tell myself it was superstition, people scaring themselves for fun. But every single time I stepped onto that back balcony and looked out, I'd get this heavy feeling in my stomach, like the air was darker over there, even when it was sunny. I kept brushing it off as imagination, stress, bad vibes, whatever. Then one afternoon, I went out to that back balcony to film a quick video for social media. I picked that spot on purpose because it was usually really quiet. No traffic noise, no people yelling, none of that. Just stillness. I recorded, went back inside, and started editing. I was cleaning up the audio in Audacity, wearing headphones, just doing my normal thing, when I suddenly heard this burst of noise, like sharp static, almost like a quick screech. It lasted maybe 2 seconds, 3 tops, and then it stopped. And the thing is, it didn't sound like a regular glitch. It sounded like something intruding, like a sudden interference. I replayed it a few times, trying to convince myself it was wind or a mic issue, but it didn't match anything else in the clip. Still, I told myself, okay, random audio artifact, move on. But after that day, something changed. I started getting this feeling that I was being watched. And I know that sounds vague and dramatic. Believe me, I wish I had a better way to explain it, but it was like, if I turned my back to the balcony, my body would tense up like something was right behind me. Not like a casual, someone staring feeling. More like my instincts were yelling, don't turn away. Like whatever it was waiting for me to slip. That feeling stuck around for days. Then one night, I couldn't sleep at all. I didn't even know why. I just had that awful sense that something was building up, like the air in the apartment was charged. I kept rolling over, checking my phone, staring at the ceiling, telling myself to stop being ridiculous. And then at around 2:40 in the morning, something like that, the light in the living room started flickering. Not the whole apartment, not other rooms, just that one light. The one near where I was lying down. It flickered in this uneven way, like someone was messing with a switch. And I swear, the second it started, that being watched feeling hit its peak. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I just froze there, staring at the ceiling glow pulsing on and off, trying not to panic, trying not to cry, trying not to move. And this is the part that still confuses me. I didn't know what to do, so in pure desperation I started praying. But not in the way I'd normally pray, because I'm Hindu, and at that point in my life I wasn't even the light a diya and chant type of person. I was more like spiritual in the background, but not actively religious. I don't even know why. I hadn't been watching anything about angels. I hadn't read anything. It just came out of nowhere. Like my brain reached for the strongest protector image it could find and grabbed it. So I whispered, actually begged, something like, "Please help me. Please protect me. Please get rid of whatever this is." And as soon as I did, I felt this warmth spread through my chest, like someone put a hand right over my heart, not physically, but in a way that made me feel held, safe. Like something good had entered the room, quiet, steady, unshakable. And I got this strong sense, this calm certainty, that whatever had been watching me wasn't the only presence there anymore. Then, almost immediately, the light stopped flickering. Just stopped. Clean. Like it had never happened. And even stranger, so did that awful watched feeling. It didn't fade over time. It didn't slowly ease away. It was just gone. Like a pressure release. Like the room finally belonged to me again. I laid there for a long time afterward, breathing shallowly, almost scared to test it. Like if I moved the wrong way, it would come back. But it didn't. The air felt normal, quiet, mine. To this day, that's what gets me. Because I keep thinking, was it all in my head? Was I exhausted and anxious and my brain created a story? But then I think about how immediate it was. The warmth, the shift, the light stabilizing, the fear evaporating, and I don't know. I honestly don't know. And it leaves me with this question I still can't fully answer. If something out there listens, God, angels, whatever you want to call it, do they show up when someone truly needs help, no matter what religion they grew up with? We moved out of that apartment about 3 years ago. Different place, different neighborhood, different everything. And I've never felt that watched sensation again. Not once. But that night, the balcony, the audio, the flickering light, and that sudden warmth, yeah, that's still the strangest thing that's ever happened to me. And I don't think I'll ever completely forget it. So, okay, let me tell you about my friend Eli, because this has been sitting heavy on my mind. Eli's always said there's something that sticks to him. I grew up calling it an attachment, and I know that might not be the perfect word, but it's the word I've got. What makes it extra eerie is that his mom noticed weird stuff even when he was little, like toddler age. She'd catch him babbling like he was having full conversations with someone, but nobody was there. And she'd swear small things in the room would shift or make noises right when he did, like the space around him was answering back. The thing is, it didn't stay in one house. They moved a couple times, different neighborhoods, different layouts, all that, and it still showed up. Like it didn't care where he lived, as long as he was there. And it plays with voices. That's honestly the part that makes my skin crawl the most. It mimics people he trusts, his mom, his aunt, even his grandpa, like it's trying to pull his attention in a really specific way. It'll call his name from another room. It'll ask questions like, "Eli?" or "Are you awake?" in this tone that sounds almost right, but not quite. One night, it even copied the sound of his grandpa's old cane tapping down the hallway, like someone was getting up and walking around. Eli sat there listening, heart pounding, because he knew his grandpa was asleep. And when he checked, nobody. Nothing. Then there's the animal stuff. His pets react like they're seeing something moving through the house that humans can't track. Like sudden stiff posture, staring at empty corners, low growling. One of his cats usually sticks close, like a little guard, always planted near him. But recently, that same cat looked toward the doorway, froze, and then absolutely lost it. Ears flat, tail puffed, bolted out of the room like it was being chased. Eli said he's never seen it do that before. It happens at random times, but it also has this awful habit of showing up in the middle of the night, especially around 3 a.m., which just feels like it's trying to be dramatic on purpose. He told me about these knocks that would start up. 3 knocks, then a pause, then 2 sets of that pattern, then silence. Then it would start again, like someone was testing his nerves in intervals. Not banging, not someone at the door, just measured, deliberate tapping. And then there are the physical things. He's woken up with fresh scratches he can't explain. One morning there was this thick smear of blood on his sheets, like somebody had a bad nosebleed, except he didn't have one. No blood on his face, no dried stuff in his nose, nothing. Just blood where he'd been sleeping, like it appeared there. He's heard doors slam when nobody's near them, heavy footsteps, breathing that isn't his, and sometimes this low, ugly sound, like growling, like something irritated that he's still there. It messes with his electronics too, which sounds almost silly until you're living it. Remote controls vanish and show up in places that make no sense. The TV volume changes on its own. Devices glitch, lights flicker, that sort of thing. And he'll suddenly feel sick, nauseous, shaky, like the air got too thick. Like whatever it is can lean into the room and press down on him. There was this one weird moment that's burned into his memory. His bedside clock had been unplugged, like fully unplugged, and it started going off. Not just flickering, like an alarm. And he, half panicked, half exhausted, actually said out loud, "Stop." And it stopped, immediately, like it heard him and chose to listen. His mom tried cleansing the house once, burning herbs, windows open, the whole thing. And according to her, whatever it is reacted so aggressively. Louder noises, heavier slams, this sudden oppressive feeling, that she cut it short because she felt like she'd made it worse. Now she's pushing him to talk to someone official, like a priest, someone experienced with spiritual cleansing. But Eli's skeptical because it hasn't reacted well to being kicked out before. He used to wear a little cross necklace, and during one of the worst episodes, the chain snapped and the cross broke, like it was making a point. And just today, this is what really pushed me to write it all out. His roommate gave him this bracelet. Not just jewelry, but one of those protective ones. Stones, string, the whole idea of it being blessed. Eli put it on, took a nap, and woke up with this sharp, stabbing pain in his stomach, like something punched him from the inside. He looked down, and the bracelet was ripped off his wrist, like yanked, and shattered on the floor. Here's the part that makes it feel personal. He said in the dream, right before waking up, he was arguing with an old friend who used to be really toxic, someone he hasn't talked to in years. And in real life, that same person once gave him a similar bracelet, and that one also broke the moment he walked into his home with it, like the house, or whatever's in it, rejected it. He says most of the activity clusters in the living room, like that room is a stage it likes using. And he's not feeding it attention either. He's tried staying calm. He's tried ignoring it. He's tried prayers, cleansings, protective charms, every version of don't react, don't escalate. And it still keeps happening. If anything, It's gotten worse with time. And that's the part I can't stop thinking about. This isn't a one-off scary night. This has been trailing him for basically his whole life. And it's escalating. He's tired. He wants peace. And I'm sitting here feeling useless because I only know so much. And I don't want to give him advice that makes things worse. I want him safe. I want him to sleep without waking up to knocks or blood or that feeling that the room is crowded when he's alone. And I don't know what this is, or what you even do when something feels like it's learned all your weak spots and keeps pressing them. So, let me tell you a few things that have happened in my life, because when I lay them all out like this, it's hard not to wonder what I'm carrying around inside me. A few years back, I had this beat-up little sedan, barely holding together, always making some new noise like it was inventing problems out of spite. I couldn't afford to keep fixing it, and I definitely couldn't afford to replace it. I remember saying, more than once, half joking, half desperate, I swear, I wish somebody would just hit this thing so insurance would finally put it out of its misery. And then, it happened. Not while I was driving either. A guy who'd been drinking slammed into it while it was parked right in front of my place. Just destroyed it. I walked outside to flashing lights and wreckage and that awful smell. And I felt this weird mix of shock and, I'm not proud to admit it, relief. The wildest part? The payout was more than I expected, like a couple thousand more than I thought the car was even worth. I remember staring at the number like, are you serious right now? That wasn't the first time I noticed something like that, though. Back when I was single, I used to do this thing, almost without thinking. If I saw a guy I thought was cute, I'd just look at him. Not a dramatic stare down, just a steady look, like I was tuning into a station. And so many times, it was like he felt it. He'd weave through a room, across a crowd, come right up and start flirting or ask for my number. It happened enough that I stopped calling it coincidence. And then there's this other pattern I hate even admitting out loud, because it makes me sound arrogant or like I'm wishing harm on people. But I swear, when someone really does me wrong or hurts me in a way that sinks deep, something tends to happen to them not long after. Something messy. And I'll hear about it later through someone else, like the universe is sending me a quiet little receipt. The biggest example is my ex. Let's call him Mason. Mason wasn't just a bad boyfriend. Mason was the kind of person who could turn the air in a room into a weapon. When I finally left him, it wasn't clean or calm. Of course it wasn't. I was packing my things, trying to stay focused, trying not to fall apart. And he followed me around the whole time, yelling, saying things meant to cut me open. I was crying, shaking, just trying to get my last bag and get out. And I remember turning around at the door, my hands full, my face hot from tears, and something in me just snapped into this cold, steady clarity. Like my voice didn't even belong to the panicked version of me anymore. I said something like, I want you to understand what you've done, and I want you to know I'm putting this on you. You won't be loved gently. You'll keep breaking people, or they'll break you. You're going to live inside the consequences of who you are. And every time life turns on you, I want you to remember my words and know you earned it. I didn't say it like a movie villain. I said it like a final truth, like I was carving it into stone. 2 years later, he messaged me, out of nowhere. He told me he genuinely believed I cursed him. And then he started listing everything that had happened since we split, like he was building a case. The women he dated after me? One cheated, got pregnant by someone else, and left. Another was living this double life he didn't see coming. Drugs, sex work, stealing from him, taking money and expensive stuff while he thought everything was normal. His brother got arrested and ended up depending on him for everything. His mom had a huge health scare and nearly died. Took months and months to recover. His closest friend just vanished on him. blocked him everywhere without explanation. I just felt heavy. Like, oh, so it wasn't just anger. It was something else. Because that's the thing. I've noticed my energy does stuff. Not always on purpose. Sometimes I'll walk into a room already overwhelmed, and suddenly everyone's tense. Or I'll be in a really bright, good mood, and people around me start laughing more, opening up, acting softer. It's like my emotional weather leaks out and changes the temperature of everything nearby. When I was younger, it was even stranger. I used to feel spirits, like feel them the way you feel someone standing behind you when nobody's there. Sometimes it felt comforting, sometimes it scared me. As I got older, it faded, but every now and then I still get little signs, like something brushing my awareness, like a gentle nudge saying, "Pay attention." And there's this one presence I've felt for as long as I can remember. Protective, familiar, like someone quietly keeping watch. My mom had a miscarriage before I was born. She never talked about it much, not in a dramatic way, just a sad fact that lived in our family history. Years later, I went to a psychic. Let's call her Nadia, mostly out of curiosity. I didn't tell her anything personal, and she said, very calmly, "You have a spirit with you, a sister energy. She protects you. She's been with you your whole life." I swear my stomach dropped, because she couldn't have known. And it wasn't just the miscarriage. She described the exact feeling I'd had since childhood, that sense that I wasn't alone in the way people mean when they say, "You have support." More like, something unseen but steady had my back. My dreams do it too. This is another thing that makes me pause. Sometimes I'll dream something small and oddly specific, and then it happens later. Not always the same way, but close enough that I'll get that chill, that "I've already been here" feeling. Like my mind peeked ahead when it wasn't supposed to. And I can't even count how many times I've blurted out what I think someone is thinking, without meaning to. It'll just come out, like I'm hearing a thought that isn't mine, and they'll look at me like I just pulled a secret out of their pocket. It happens with friends, with strangers, with people I've barely exchanged 2 sentences with. That shocked look is always the same. I've seen a couple different psychics over the years, mostly because, honestly, I needed someone to either confirm I wasn't imagining it or tell me I was. One of them told me, "You already know you have abilities. You get them from your mom." And then she said something that stuck with me. "If you ever have a daughter, hers will be stronger than yours." And the last one, this one still makes me laugh a little because it's so surreal, told me something like, "You're written about in old stories." She implied I had some connection to Greek myth, like I was the kind of being people used to turn into legends, and that I chose to live a human life because I wanted to understand what it felt like. Now, listen, I'm not saying I took that as literal fact, but when she said it, I felt this deep calm settle in me, like my body recognized the idea before my brain could argue with it. And what's funny is, when I was a kid, I loved mythology. I was obsessed. I'd stay after class to read about gods and monsters and prophecies and all these wild, dramatic fates, like I was hungry for it. So when I look back on all of this, the car, the weird timing, the way people seem to orbit whatever I'm feeling, the dreams, the thoughts I catch, the presence that's followed me my whole life, I can't help but wonder, like, what am I? Am I just sensitive? Hyper-aware? Good at patterns? Or is it something older than that? And my mom, she always shrugs when I bring it up, like it's the most normal thing in the world. "It's in our nature," she'll say. And honestly, the older I get, the more I believe her. So, when I was a kid, I used to feel things around me that I couldn't explain. Like I could sense spirits the way you sense someone standing behind you, without seeing them. And there were a few moments that still make my skin prickle when I think about them. Little, almost playful things. A book sliding off a shelf when I walked by. A pencil rolling across the table like someone flicked it. Once, a light object, like a balled-up sock, tossed gently in my direction. Not to hurt me, just to get my attention. Like, hey, we see you. You feel us. I didn't talk about it much, because how do you say that out loud without sounding completely ridiculous? But I carried it around quietly, like a strange talent I didn't ask for. Then, when I was 16, something happened that changed the whole shape of it. My friend, his name was Dylan, just this bright, funny, warm person, was walking home one night after leaving his girlfriend's house. It was raining hard, the kind of rain that makes the streetlights look smeared and far away. He was 17, and he was walking along this busy road that didn't even have proper sidewalks, just a narrow shoulder and water rushing along the curb. A drunk driver in a big SUV swerved, and that was it. Dylan didn't die right away. He made it to the hospital, but not for long. And I remember the sick, unreal feeling of hearing the news, like my brain refused to accept it, like it kept trying to rewind the moment and choose a different ending. After the funeral, that's when he started showing up. Not like suddenly he's standing in my room with full lighting, nothing like that. It was more soft and close. He'd come to me in that weird space between sleep and awake, or in dreams so vivid they didn't feel like dreams at all. He'd talk to me, and it always felt like him. His energy, his way of speaking, even the little pauses he used to make when he was trying to be serious. And he kept saying things like, "Please go see my mom. Tell her I'm okay. Tell her I'm not alone. Tell her I don't want her to fall apart." He was upset, not angry, just heartbroken about how wrecked she was. He'd been raised by a single mom, and he loved her in this fiercely loyal way. It felt like he couldn't stand the thought of her hurting without him there to help. So I did it. A few of us would go visit her together, bring food, sit with her, talk about him. And at some point I'd find a quiet moment and pass along what he'd told me. But here's the part that still messes with me. A few hours later, I wouldn't be able to remember what I'd said. It wasn't like normal forgetting. It was like the memory had been wiped clean. I'd know I'd delivered the message. I'd know it mattered. But the actual words? Gone. Like they were never meant to stay with me. Like they weren't mine to hold on to. That went on for a few weeks, on and off. He'd come, he'd ask, I'd go, I'd tell her. And then the details would dissolve out of my mind like fog. When I left for college, I thought it would stop. New place, new routine, new noise. But every once in a while, he'd still appear. Sometimes in dreams. And sometimes, this is the part that still feels impossible to say. Sometimes in the daytime, in crowded places. I'd be walking across campus or through a busy cafe, and I'd see him across the room. Always at a distance. Always smiling at me like we shared a private joke. And it would hit me like a slap. Because daylight makes you feel safe. Daylight makes you think, that kind of thing doesn't happen right now. I'd stop dead, my heart pounding. Then I'd push through people, weaving between shoulders and backpacks, trying to get closer. He wasn't there. No trace, just strangers, just noise, just the weird feeling that I'd chased something that didn't belong to the world anymore. The last time I ever had an encounter with him was, honestly, kind of ugly. It was after a party. I was extremely drunk, like blackout drunk. My boyfriend at the time, Marco, had to carry me back to my dorm room, literally on his back, and put me to bed. He climbed in next to me and fell asleep. In the middle of the night, I woke up crying. But it was strange. I was awake, but my eyes were still closed, like my body was panicking before my brain had fully arrived. I shook Marco hard until he jolted up, and I remember blurting out, "He's here. Dylan is here. He wants to talk to me." And then I started sobbing, because I felt terrified and guilty at the same time. I told Marco, "Tell him to go away. Tell him I'm too drunk. I can't do this. He's scaring me." I didn't even fully understand what I was saying, but I meant it in that moment. I was overwhelmed and messy and not in control of myself, and suddenly this presence I used to feel comforted by felt like too much. The next morning, we were at breakfast with friends, and Marco told everyone what happened, half amused, half unsettled. And I just sat there stunned, because I hadn't seen Dylan in months. I thought those visits had ended, but apparently, they hadn't. And after that night, he never came back. Not in dreams, not in that half-sleep space, not in crowds, nothing. Sometimes I feel guilty about it, because I don't think he ever meant to scare me. I think he was young and confused, and still emotionally tied to the people he loved, especially his mom. And I was, in a strange way, one of his last threads to that life. One of the last people who could feel him and hear him. And I told him to go away. I haven't had anything like that happen since, not as clearly, not as personally. But I still get moments where I feel something nearby, like the air shifts, like the room has an extra heartbeat in it. And when I miss him, I miss those late-night conversations more than I want to admit. Not because it was fun, not because it was some spooky party trick, because it felt like love trying to find a way through. And now, the feeling I get is that he's moved on. Like whatever was attached to the version of him I knew, 17 years old, worried about his mom, still hanging around the edges of the world, has finally loosened. Like his spirit isn't holding that shape anymore. And I hope that means he's at peace. So this happened about 6 years ago, when I was in my final year at uni. I was living in this creaky old shared house with a few other students, and that night, I had the place completely to myself. I remember it being one of those winter evenings where it's not even that late, but somehow it's pitch black outside anyway. The rain was hammering the windows, proper downpour. Out of nowhere, I get a message from a guy I barely knew. Let's call him Elliot. Hey, weird question, kind of energy. We weren't friends, more like someone I'd chatted to a couple of times on a night out, maybe exchanged a few words at the gym. At some point, I must have mentioned I lived close by, because he said he was soaked, heading back from the gym, and asked if he could wait at mine until the rain eased up. It was unexpected, but honestly, it sounded harmless. So I said sure, pop round, just until the weather chills out. When Elliot arrived, I was already settled in, watching a film in my room. I wasn't exactly in hosting mode, so I just told him, "You can come in and watch if you want. I'm halfway through this." He sits down beside me on the edge of the bed, and for the first few minutes, it's normal. Quiet, just the TV and the rain. And then, things start feeling off. The first thing I noticed was these sudden flashes in my vision. Not like little specks or when you stand up too fast. I mean full-on, bright white bursts, like someone taking a camera flash directly in my face. My entire view would get washed out for a split second, then it would vanish. It happened a few times, maybe 3, 4 times over the rest of the film, and I kept trying to rationalize it. The room was dark, the TV was the only light source. Maybe the movie had quick, bright cuts. Maybe my eyes were just playing games. I really wanted it to be something boring. But then there was the other thing. I kept getting this intense sensation that there was a hand hovering just above my shoulder, my left shoulder, the side away from where Elliot was sitting. It was so convincing that I kept turning my head, like I was about to catch someone mid-gesture, expecting to see an arm reaching over me. Every time. Nothing. No one there. No movement. Just empty air and my own stupid heartbeat suddenly louder in my ears. Again, I did the same thing. I explained it away. It's dark. Your brain fills in gaps, shadows and flickering light, whatever. I tried to focus on the film, tried to act normal, but my body kept doing that little tense reset. Shoulders tightening, neck stiff, checking again. Eventually the film ends. By then, the rain had eased off, and Elliot stands up like, "All right, I'll head out." I remember thinking, okay, that was slightly weird, but fine. Like maybe I was overtired. Maybe the stormy atmosphere got in my head. Nothing I'd be telling people about. And then, right as he's putting his shoes on near the door, he does this sudden little jolt, this sharp twitch in his shoulder. The kind you might not even mention normally. But for whatever reason, I did. I said something like, "You all right? What was that?" And without even looking up, still calm, still tying his laces, Elliot goes, super casually, "Oh yeah, that happens because there's something that follows me. Like a demon, basically. Whenever it touches my shoulder, I twitch." Just like that. Like he was explaining a stiff neck. I swear my whole body went cold. I just stood there, completely stuck, because my brain immediately replayed the entire evening. Those white flashes, that constant feeling of something hovering over my shoulder. But no, the weird stuff happened first. Then he said that. I don't even remember what I replied. Something embarrassingly neutral like, "Right, okay." Like I was trying to be polite to a conversation about the weather. And then he finished his shoes, stood up, said goodbye, and left into the night like he hadn't just dropped a nuclear bomb into my living room. I didn't message him again after that. I was rattled for days, checking over my shoulder in the mirror, sleeping with the hall light on, feeling silly about it, then feeling not silly the second the house went quiet. And here's the thing, nothing ever happened again. No more flashes, no more hovering hand sensation, nothing that I could point to and say, "Yep, confirmed." I'm still not someone who goes around insisting the supernatural is real. But that night, that was the closest I've ever come to genuinely questioning everything for a minute. Because I still can't explain how my body seemed to react to something I hadn't even been told about yet. I don't even know where to start with this, so I'll just start where it really began for me. My cousin Marisol has lived in this old place for years, and it's always had this on and off energy. You know how some houses just feel like they're holding their breath? It's like that. And every so often, it ramps up, then it fades, like it's deciding whether it wants to be noticed. The first time I ever experienced something there, it was a few years ago. Marisol was getting ready for work, and I was lying down in the guest room half awake, half not, just resting. The house was quiet in that morning way, like you can hear the hum of the fridge and your own breathing. And then, out of nowhere, we hear a little kid's voice in the living room. Not a whisper, not a creak that sounded like words. A voice. Like a child, probably 5 or 6, saying just a few words, maybe a short sentence, like someone talking to themselves. Clear enough that it snapped both of us into full attention. Marisol slowly steps out of her bedroom, and I step out from the other side of the hallway, and we meet in the middle like we're in some movie. We just stare at each other, wide-eyed, and at the same time we go, "Did you hear that?" We were the only 2 people in the house. No TV on, no neighbors inside, no kids, nothing. And I'm telling you, the air felt different after that, like the house realized we heard it. Then about a year later, I'm back over there again. This time it's evening, and we leave her bedroom to grab water from the kitchen, just for a minute. We come back, and we both stop in the doorway so hard it's like our bodies hit an invisible wall. Her dresser drawer, this heavy, old, solid wood thing, like something you'd see in a 1950s or 60s catalog, had been yanked open so hard that the drawer wasn't just out. The whole thing had broken. The rails were messed up, one hinge was snapped, and the front corner of the drawer was cracked like someone had forced it with pure anger. And the weirdest part? It wasn't like it had slowly fallen apart over time. It looked fresh, violent, like someone tried to rip it out in one go. There was no one else in the room, no pets, no open windows, nothing that would explain that kind of force. I remember just standing there with my mouth open, thinking, how would a person even do that without bracing themselves? It was the kind of strength that makes your brain short-circuit because it doesn't fit reality. Marisol told me she'd had so many other things happen that she'd stopped even trying to prove it to people. She's felt cold rushes go straight through her body like someone walked through her. She's seen little glowing specks, like orbs, show up in videos and sometimes with her own eyes, floating in a way that didn't look like dust. She's watched small objects tip over when nothing touched them. One time she swore the tiny drawer of her jewelry box slid out on its own and clattered onto the floor like it had been flicked. And then there are the sounds, those ones that really get under your skin. Not little settling noises. I mean sudden, sharp crashes like something heavy fell. Except you go looking and nothing has moved. No explanation, just a loud, aggressive bang out of nowhere, like the house is trying to startle you on purpose. For a while, though, things actually calmed down. The last year or so has been quieter, which honestly felt like a relief. Like maybe whatever it was had finally gotten bored. But now my uncle, Darren, is the one getting worn down. He's always been a skeptic, like the kind of guy who rolls his eyes and goes, "It's pipes, it's wiring, it's your imagination." So when he started talking about this, I didn't take it seriously at first. And here's the part that makes it feel creepy. He says the sound moves. Like it'll happen, and it seems like it's coming from the corner near the hallway. Then later it sounds like it's by the kitchen. Then it's behind him. Not consistent. Not one fixed spot. He described it like it's circling him, which, okay, sounds dramatic. But I heard a short recording he took, and it really is this thin, sharp tone that doesn't sound like any normal house beep. It's been happening for about 2 months now, and he's starting to crack a little. Not like he thinks he's in danger, more like it's just slowly making him feel unsettled in his own home. Like he can't relax because he's waiting for the next set of 3. And the fact that it seems to follow him room to room, that's the part that's getting to him. So yeah, that's where we're at. If you've ever dealt with something like that, whether you think it's paranormal or some weird electrical quirk, what would you tell someone to do next? Because I'd love to pass along anything helpful to Darren. At this point, I don't even care what the explanation is. I just want him to stop feeling like the house is playing games with him. So, this story goes back to when I was about 8 years old, living in a smaller house in the west side of Mesa, Arizona. It wasn't fancy or anything, just me, my mom, and my little sister, and we were making it work. And honestly, up until a certain point, I didn't feel like anything was off in that place. It just felt like home. But then my older sister, Marisol, moved in with her 3 kids for a while. We had this extra room, and she needed somewhere to land, so my mom made it happen. The house got louder, more crowded, more alive. And that's when the weird stuff started. At first, it was little things that didn't make sense unless you really sat with them. Like the old basketball in the backyard. Out of nowhere, you'd hear it bouncing by itself, like someone was dribbling it and steady. Or you'd hear a hard thump against the back wall, like it had been thrown. And sometimes, no joke, you'd hear footsteps above us, like someone running across the roof, back and forth, quick like they were playing a game up there. We'd all freeze and look at each other like, "Did you hear that?" But no one wanted to be the one to say it out loud. Then one night, the whole house snapped awake to a scream. It came from Marisol's room. She and the kids were all sleeping in there together. My mom shot out of bed, and I ran right behind her, my heart going crazy. We burst into the room thinking something horrible happened. And there's my nephew, Eli, who was about 3 at the time, standing by the closet door, shaking, crying like he'd seen something he couldn't explain. And then he does something that made my stomach drop. He pulls the closet door shut and tries to lock himself inside. My mom grabbed him right away, trying to calm him down, asking him what he was doing, why he was hiding. And Eli, still crying, still terrified, goes, "I'm talking to the little boy. He wants me to come in." I remember the air in that room feeling thick, like it suddenly got colder. Because at that age, kids can imagine a lot, but the way he said it wasn't playful. It was serious. Then he wipes his face and says something else, something that felt so specific it didn't sound made up at all. He goes, "He's on the roof." My mom stared at him like, "What did you just say?" And Eli nods again and points upward, insisting, "He's on the roof. You'll find him up there." So the next morning, my mom decides we're checking, because what else do you do when a little kid says something like that and you've been hearing running up there for weeks? And since I was small and light, they lifted me up to climb onto the roof from the back patio. I remember my hands scraping the rough edge, the sun already warming the shingles, and me trying to act brave even though I was scared. I get up there, and I'm looking around, expecting, I don't know, anything. But there's no kid, no footprints, no sign of anyone, just one single shoe. A tiny shoe sitting near the edge like it had been left there on purpose. And it was bright red, like one of those little kids' character shoes, except in my version, it wasn't Lightning McQueen. It was a red Spider-Man sneaker. Small, worn, definitely a child's. It looked like it belonged to someone younger than me, maybe 5 or 6. I picked it up and just stared at it for a second, confused, because how does a kid's shoe end up on a roof when nobody's been up there? I tossed it down carefully to my mom, and she caught it and looked at it. And then she got quiet. And what bothered me most was how nobody really said much after that. Like everyone's brain just refused to accept it. My sister turned away. My mom held the shoe for a second, then set it down like it was too heavy to keep holding. A few days later, the landlord and her husband come over. They're walking through the house, checking the problems, doing that polite small talk adults do. And then my mom, just straight up, no warm-up, asks them, "Has anyone ever died in this house?" The landlord blinks like she didn't hear her right. "Why would you ask that?" So my mom tells them, everything. The noises, the running on the roof, the ball sounds in the backyard. And she tells them about Eli crying, locking himself in the closet, saying he was talking to a little boy. And I'll never forget what happened next. The landlord and her husband look at each other, and you can literally see their faces change. Like the question hit a nerve they didn't expect to be touched. They both look down, and after a moment, the husband quietly says something like, "We did have a son." And the landlord nods, eyes glossy. She says he was very sick, fighting something for a long time, and he passed away in that house. The room got so still. My mom went and grabbed the red Spider-Man shoe and showed it to them, and the landlord's hand flew to her mouth. Her husband just stared at it like it wasn't real. She whispered that it looked like their son's. And I'm telling you, the emotion in that moment was so heavy it felt like it sat on my chest. Because suddenly it wasn't a ghost story anymore. It felt like grief had been living with us, quietly, this whole time. They asked if they could take the shoe. My mom handed it over respectfully, like returning something that never should have been lost. And after that day, everything stopped. No more footsteps on the roof. No more strange backyard sounds. No more weird little moments that made your skin prickle. It was like, once that shoe made it back to the people it belonged to, whatever was hanging around finally let go. And I know how it sounds. I do. But when you live through something like that, when you see adults go pale because you accidentally stumbled into the truth, it stays with you. Not because it was scary, but because it was sad. And somehow, in the end, it felt like the only thing that kid wanted was to be found. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you something I don't usually share with people unless I really trust them, because it sounds like the kind of thing you'd roll your eyes at. But it happened, and I've carried it around ever since. So, I'm 31 now, and since I was little, weird stuff has happened around me. Nothing dramatic every day, not like a horror movie, just little things. Objects shifting when they shouldn't, that prickly feeling that someone's standing behind you when you know you're alone. When I was a kid, but over time, I kind of learned to live around it. Like, okay, that's my life. Cool. But about 9 years ago, I had one experience that felt different, heavier. Like something wasn't just there, but aimed at me. And I tried telling people, but nobody really believed me. Honestly, not even my partner, Luca, and we've been together forever, more than a decade. He'd listen, sure, but you could tell he thought I was just spooking myself. Then, in late 2019, Luca and I went on holiday in northern Spain. We rented this quiet place out in the countryside, an old farm property, but we had the whole thing to ourselves. One day we decided to go hiking, and it was gorgeous. Big open sky, tall grass, that kind of clean, bright air that makes you feel like you can breathe again. We reached this wide plateau, and right in the middle, like someone had planted it there on purpose, was this huge stone monument. Not exactly a cross, but close enough to give me that same weird feeling. I'm not religious. It's not about faith for me. It's more like certain symbols hit something in my chest that I can't explain. Like an old bruise you forgot you had. We kept going, and that's when we saw the house. It didn't look ruined exactly, but all the windows were sealed shut. Not boarded up, chained. Like chains looped across the frames, locks hanging there, metal catching the light. It should have scared me more than it did, but what I felt wasn't panic at first. It was sadness. That's the only word I can use. The place felt like it was holding its breath, like it was embarrassed to exist. Even Luca went quiet, and that's saying something because he jokes through everything. I told him, "I don't feel good here. Can we go?" And right as I said that, right as we turned away, we heard music. Not from a phone, not from a car, not from a nearby house, because there wasn't one. It was this thin, drifting melody, like a music box, except it didn't feel sweet. It felt wrong, like it didn't belong in the daylight, like it was being played to remind someone of something. And I remember thinking, very clearly, something terrible happened in that house. We started walking back toward the trailhead, toward the car, and I was trying to shake it off. Like, okay, creepy house, weird sound. Let's be normal. Let's go eat dinner. I kept telling myself that. Then I saw her. A woman, blonde hair pulled back, pale coat, hands clasped in front of her like she was praying or trying to hold herself together. She was walking oddly, not limping exactly, but stiff, like her joints didn't agree on how to move. And I know how this sounds, but the second I saw her, even from far away, my stomach dropped. It wasn't, she looks strange. It was a full-body animal certainty, danger. Luca laughed at first, just a little nervous chuckle like, "What, her? She's just walking." But even as he said it, he changed. His shoulders tightened, his voice flattened out. He started watching her the way you watch something unpredictable, and right as we passed, she turned her head toward me. I saw her face for maybe a second. It was grayish purple, like bruised skin. Her expression wasn't blank, it was furious, upset, like someone trapped in pain for too long and it had curdled into rage. The image that popped into my head was awful, like seeing someone who'd been locked away, forgotten, and they were still screaming inside even if their mouth was closed. Luca looked at her too, fully, and he didn't laugh after that. Not once. We practically ran to the car, and when we got there, she was gone. Just gone. Like she'd never been on the path at all. Then, as Luca backed the car up, she appeared again, just for a flash, in the rearview mirror. And then she disappeared again. I remember Luca gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white. And later he said, really quietly, "I never want to see something like that again." Back at the rental, I tried to look up the area, tried to figure out if the house had a history. Fire, murders, anything. But it was like it didn't exist on paper. No articles, no official records I could find. Just nothing. But I couldn't shake this feeling, this awful pity, that whoever that woman was, something had been done to her. Like she hadn't just died, like she'd suffered. And that's where most stories would end, right? Like, creepy encounter, we left, the end. No. That night, while we were getting ready for dinner, we started hearing noises. Little knocks, soft thumps, like something shifting in the building. And we were alone. No neighbors on the other side of the wall, no upstairs footsteps. The whole place was ours. I remember joking, trying to keep it light, like, well, tonight's gonna be fun, with that shaky laugh you do when you're trying not to cry. Around 1:45 a.m., I woke up to the sound of the doorknob turning. Not a random click. Turning. Rattling. Like someone was testing it over and over. Then, this is the part that still makes my skin go tight. Even though the door stayed closed, it sounded like someone kicked it. Like a hard impact. Footsteps. In the kitchen. Walking fast, back and forth, like someone pacing with purpose. Then the sounds moved toward the veranda, and then into the hallway, and then into the rooms. I lay there frozen, staring into the dark, and I felt it. That presence. The same heavy, pointed feeling from years earlier. Not curious, not neutral, malicious. And then it got closer. Close enough that I felt like it was standing near the bedroom door, watching me. You know that feeling when you can't see something but your body is screaming that it's right there? Like every hair is trying to stand up and point at it? A few minutes later, it felt like something ran toward the bed. Not footsteps, more like a pressure change, like the air itself surged. And then I sensed it right beside me, near my head, like it was leaning over me, like it was about to climb on top of me. I couldn't move. I couldn't even get my voice to work. I was trapped inside my own body, trying to scream through wet cement. And then Luca woke up. He started shouting, like angry shouting, not confused, like he was fighting something he couldn't see. And the second he did, everything stopped. The sounds, the pressure, the feeling, like someone flipped a switch. I blinked, and it was morning light logic again, and my brain tried to do that thing where it tells you it was a dream. But later, Luca told me what he experienced. So it wasn't just sleep paralysis. It wasn't just my imagination. We left that place and never went back. And for a long time, I didn't have anything that dark happen again. I actually let myself believe maybe it was over. But here's the thing. For the last couple of years, Luca and I have lived in a newer apartment. Deliberately not a house, not a garden, not anything isolated. We thought, okay, walls, neighbors, normal life, safer. And recently, in our bedroom, we've been hearing sounds from the same spot, over and over. Knocks. The faint slide of something like a drawer shifting. Little clicks that don't match the building settling. It happens in summer and winter, so it's not heat or pipes or expansion. The furniture isn't old. There's no good reason for it. And sometimes, I get this cold feeling in the room that doesn't make sense. Like the air around the bed is 10 degrees colder than the rest of the apartment. One morning, not long ago, I woke up after a brutal night of sleep. I'd had this vivid, horrible dream about my grandmother who passed away. And Luca's grandmother was there too, which made it even stranger. The dream felt heavy, like it clung to me even after my eyes opened. And Luca looked wrecked. He told me he hadn't slept. He'd heard the noises. He was scared. And he said the room felt freezing, unnaturally freezing. He said, very quietly, it felt like someone was right next to me. So, yeah. I'm not saying I have answers. I'm not saying I know what any of it is. I just know what it felt like. And I know the difference between a normal, creepy moment and something that makes your body react like it's fighting for its life. And I'm really, really hoping whatever that was doesn't decide to get close again. Hey, so I've been sitting with this for a while, and I'm finally just going to say it out loud the way it happened, because keeping it in my head is making it heavier. It was New Year's Day, and I swear it started off with the kind of weird little thing you'd normally laugh about later. Except it didn't stop. I was in my kitchen, half awake, and a pop can, like an empty one I thought I'd tossed, suddenly jumped when I bumped the counter. It didn't just fall. It whipped up and shot right in front of my face and scraped the side of my neck. Close enough that I stood there with my fingers pressed to my skin thinking, that was way too close. You know that cold wave of what if that hits your chest? That. And then, later that morning, I went into my bedroom, already uneasy, and I got this awful sense that something was there. Not like a shadow from a curtain, like a presence. I even remember staring at this one spot near the foot of the bed, near the mirror, because something about that exact area felt wrong. My eyes kept snapping back to it like my body was noticing something my brain couldn't name. Around the same time, I was on FaceTime with my grandma, Nana Lydia, and my sister Marin was sitting beside her. I was trying to sound casual, like, haha, this is creepy, but whatever, while showing them these strange marks on the wall. They looked like claw marks. I know how that sounds. But they were long, angled scratches, and I hadn't dragged furniture there or hung anything up. I was literally panning the camera like, look, tell me I'm not losing it. And then, this is the part that still makes my stomach flip. I was on the bed, phone in my hand, and it felt like my body got yanked. Not tripped, not startled. Pulled, like someone grabbed me by the middle and hauled me sideways. I went flying off the mattress and hit the floor hard, shin first, right on that same spot I'd been staring at earlier. The pain was immediate, sharp, deep, like it rang through the bone. My phone launched out of my hand too, like I couldn't even hold on to it. And I just lay there for a second with my heart slamming, trying to make sense of how fast it happened. I ended the call not long after because I was rattled, and I told myself I was just overtired, that it was a fluke, that my brain was being dramatic. But I couldn't shake the fear. I didn't even want to sleep in my bedroom after that. I dragged a blanket to the living room and slept on the couch instead, with the lights on, like a kid. The thing is, there's no bathroom on the main floor, so at some point in the night, when my stomach woke me up, I had to run upstairs anyway. Right past the bedroom, right past the place I didn't want to be. And that's when the last incident hit. Only it wasn't spooky, it was physical, and it was terrifying in a totally different way. I got hit with sudden, brutal diarrhea, like my whole body turned inside out in minutes. I hadn't really eaten properly the day before. My appetite's been off because of my stimulant medication, so it wasn't even like I had anything in me to lose. But my body was dumping everything anyway. I started sweating through my clothes fast, the kind of sweat that feels cold and hot at the same time. My mouth went dry. My hands got weak. I remember sitting there thinking, I'm going to pass out. And then it got worse, because when I tried to stand, my legs didn't feel like they belonged to me. I couldn't even reach for my phone. I honestly thought, this is it. I'm alone in this house and I'm going to die on the bathroom floor. And then, I blacked out. The next day, I was still shaky and bruised and in that awful, foggy aftermath where everything feels unreal. I talked to Marin again, and she told me something that made my skin prickle. She said from her end of the FaceTime call, it didn't look like I fell. She said it looked like I got abruptly pulled because of how suddenly my arm jerked and how the phone just flew like it had been knocked out of my hand. So then I did what you do when you're scared and you don't know what else to do. I started digging. And while I was looking things up, this memory surfaced that I hadn't thought about in years. It came back like a flash, and then it just sat there, heavy and undeniable. I bought this house in late summer of 2022. I remember being excited and stressed and running around fixing little things before I fully moved in. Then that fall, I got into a terrible rear-end collision on my way back from the property. My car was totaled. I got a traumatic brain injury. I didn't even realize how bad it was at first. I lost consciousness later that day. And after that, pieces of my memory from that time got scrambled. Some of it is still missing. Some of it still feels like it happened to someone else. But here's the memory that came back. Before that crash, I had been in the bedroom, near the mirror, and I saw a figure at about waist height in the reflection, right in that same area where I'd gotten hurt on New Year's Day. And in that moment, back then, my body had reacted before my brain did. I remember this surge of panic, like my instincts were screaming at me to get out. I wasn't just leaving the house that day in 2022. I was fleeing it. So once that clicked, I pulled the property registration record. Here we call it the parcel register. And I started piecing together the history. I found that one of the original owners died around the turn of the year back in the early 1990s, based on the timing of how the paperwork changed. And a neighbor told me he was in his 30s when it happened. After that, his spouse stayed in the home for decades, until the late 2010s, and then it changed hands again before I bought it. And I know, houses have histories. People live and die. That's normal. But the timing, New Year's, the bedroom, the mirror, the figure, the way I keep getting hurt. My brain keeps trying to line it up like it's a story with a point. I live alone. I'm 28. I work a demanding job that already drains the life out of me. And since I found all this out, my sleep has been wrecked. I don't have family in town. When I asked my parents for help staging the place because I want to sell it and get out, they basically said no. Just no. And that hurt almost as much as everything else. So I've been trying to do it myself. Cleaning, sorting, making it look like a normal, happy house someone would want. But the more I try, the more things happen. I slip. I fall. I slam my elbows or twist my legs. I end up with fresh bruises and that same dread sitting in my throat. I even tried burning sage. Like, I'm not even someone who does that, but I was desperate. And I sprinkled salt at the edges of the rooms like people suggest. And if anything, it felt like it made the atmosphere worse. Like whatever is in here didn't calm down. It got irritated. And there's this other strange thing too. Time feels slippery in here. I'll swear I've been in the bedroom for 10 minutes and it's suddenly an hour. Or I'll go to fold laundry and look up and the afternoon is gone. It messes with my head. It makes me feel like I can't trust myself. So that's where I'm at. I'm scared. I'm exhausted. I don't want to die in this house, but I also don't have the kind of support system where I can just snap my fingers and move out and recover from all these injuries without help. Because I'm trying so hard to be rational. I really am. But it's getting harder to pretend this is just bad luck. So, I'm going to tell you this the way my mom told it to me, because I was just a tiny baby when it happened. barely a few months old, so everything I know is from her memory. It was a little over 20 years ago, back when my parents were living in the same old house my mom grew up in. The kind of house that holds on to family history, you know? My mom's dad, my grandpa, had passed away years before I was born. I never got to meet him, even though I ended up being named after him. And for a long time, that was just a bittersweet fact. Until the house started doing this thing. One afternoon, my dad, Elliot, was out of town for work. It was just my mom, Marissa, and me. I was maybe 4 months old, sleeping in my crib upstairs. My mom had laid down in the nursery too, just trying to steal a nap when the baby naps, because you do what you can. And then she heard it. The door that led in from the garage opened. Not a creak, not the house settling, an actual open. And right after that, clear footsteps. Like someone had walked into the kitchen with purpose, like they belonged there. My mom said her whole body went cold. She sat straight up, scooped me out of the crib without even thinking, and just stood there listening, waiting for another sound, a voice, anything. But the house went quiet again. So she did the only thing she could think to do. She ran. She bolted down the stairs, holding me tight, and rushed straight out the front door. Once she was outside, heart pounding, she circled the house checking everything. The windows, the locks, the doors. She even went to the garage door, and it was locked. Deadbolted. No sign anyone had come in at all. At first, she tried to talk herself out of it. Maybe she dreamed it. Maybe the sound traveled weirdly in that house, but over the next several weeks, it happened again. And again. Same pattern, the garage door sound, then footsteps through the kitchen. Sometimes down the hallway. Once she swore she heard the soft weight of someone settling into the recliner in the living room, like that old chair cushion giving in under a familiar body. And then there were the nursery sounds. Both my mom and dad would hear walking in my room when I was asleep. Not just a creak in the floor, actual pacing, like someone moving from one side of the nursery to the other. And the unsettling part was, they'd be in the kitchen, or the bedroom, or downstairs together. They'd go check, expecting maybe the other parent was up there, but no one would be in the room. Just me, sound asleep. Eventually there was one day, my mom never forgot this, when she heard that recliner moment again, and it hit her so hard she had to sit down. Because she realized the sounds weren't random. They were familiar. They matched her dad's routine. Apparently, when he was alive, he came home the same way every day, through the garage, a quick pause in the kitchen to greet her mom, then down the hallway to his recliner for the evening news. My mom said it was like hearing an old habit replayed, step by step, like the house remembered it. The only person who actually saw anything was a babysitter, Kendra, who watched me one night while my parents were out. Kendra told them she went upstairs to check on me, and as she reached the top of the stairs, she clearly saw part of someone. Just a leg, jeans, a shoe, rounding the corner away from the nursery and heading down the hallway. Not a shadow, not a blur, a person, or at least enough of one to make her stomach drop. She ran after them, obviously, because who wouldn't? And the hallway was empty. No doors opening, no footsteps fading, just nothing. So she asked a priest to come by and bless the home. Nothing dramatic, nothing movie-like, just a calm, respectful blessing. And my mom, Marissa, said she spoke out loud too, kind of gently, like she was talking to her dad right in the room. She told him it was okay, that she loved him, that he didn't need to stay, that it was time to rest. And after that, it stopped. The garage sounds stopped. The hallway footsteps stopped. The nursery pacing stopped. Like someone finally listened and let go. My mom was the youngest in her family, and I was her first baby. And our family has always believed, quietly, without making it into some big scary thing, that it was just my grandpa coming back one last time, checking on his daughter, seeing the baby who carried his name, making sure we were okay. And honestly, when my mom tells it, it doesn't feel like a horror story. It feels like a goodbye. So, I should probably start by saying I'm from Brazil, and where I grew up, it's pretty normal to hear about Afro-Brazilian spiritual traditions. People talking about guides, spirits, energies, all of that. Even if you're not deeply involved, you're around it. You learn what people believe, what they do to protect themselves, what they say not to do. And because of that, I've had moments that were weird, unsettling, but usually manageable. Usually I can stay calm and tell myself, all right, breathe, don't feed it, don't panic. But there were two specific times, when I didn't feel in control at all. The first one happened on a night when I really wasn't okay. Like emotionally, I was a mess. I'd been pushing through life on autopilot, and I remember leaving the gym late, almost midnight, walking home alone with my headphones in, music up loud like I could drown out my own thoughts. The song was Numb by Linkin Park. I know that sounds dramatic, but I swear, even now, whenever it comes on, my stomach tightens. My brain just drops right back into that night. Anyway, my route home passed by this old cemetery. Not huge, but big enough that it always felt quiet in the wrong way. The kind of quiet that makes your footsteps sound too loud. And as I got closer, I started feeling it. That sensation like someone is behind you. At first I brushed it off. In my city, your brain automatically goes to practical fear, you know? Like, don't get robbed, don't be stupid, keep walking. But this wasn't just nerves. This felt thick, like the air got heavier, like something was pressing down on my shoulders and chest. It didn't feel like a person following me. It felt like presence, like something had noticed me and decided I belonged to it for the next few minutes. Then I reached the street right in front of the cemetery gates, and my body just flipped into survival mode. You know that feeling where you don't even decide to be afraid? Your body decides for you? That's what happened. Because the being followed feeling changed. It wasn't behind me at a distance anymore. It felt like it was moving fast, like it was running toward me. And the pressure got so intense it felt suffocating, like I couldn't get a full breath. So I ran. And I know, afterwards, I thought the same thing. Why did you run? Because if it's something spiritual, running doesn't help. And if it's a person, you might make yourself look like an easy target. But I wasn't thinking. I was pure panic. I ran hard, praying under my breath, begging to see anyone. A neighbor, a couple, a car, anything. Just something normal to snap the moment in half. The worst part was the sense that it reacted to me running. Like the second I acknowledged it, it got excited. Like, oh, you feel me. And it pressed in even harder, like it was right on my back. I got home shaking, hands clumsy, heart slamming, like I'd sprinted a mile. I didn't even turn on all the lights at first. I just went straight into my little, I'm not playing with this, routine. I lit candles, I prayed, I spoke out loud like I was setting rules in my own home. And as I did that, this impression settled in me. Not a voice exactly, more like a sudden knowing. It felt feminine, like it was a woman, or at least something carrying that energy. A presence that had latched onto me on that walk and followed me right up to my door like it had permission. I never found out what it wanted. I still don't know, but I know what it felt like. Not curiosity, not harmless. It felt hungry, heavy, possessive, and that alone was enough to scare me more than anything. The second time was different. It happened indoors, in a place that was supposed to be safe, and I remember smiling at first, because it was kind of comforting. But then I said something that I immediately regretted. I told him, gently, just Be careful. Sometimes things pretend to be good. Sometimes they act helpful just to drain you or attach to you. The second those words left my mouth, immediately, the light bulb in my room exploded. Not flickered, not burned out, exploded. A sharp pop and that hot, bitter smell, like scorched dust and electricity. We both went quiet. I stood up to go check it, and I walked to my bedroom door like I was on rails. And then I got there and I just stopped. I couldn't cross the threshold. It was like my body locked up, like my muscles refused to cooperate. And the fear wasn't just, I'm scared. It was primal. Like every instinct in me was screaming, do not go in there. I tried to force myself, like, come on, it's your room. It's literally your room. But the closer I leaned, the worse it got. Like stepping forward would be stepping into something that wanted me. So I backed up, breathing fast, and I did the only thing I could think of. I lit candles again. I prayed again. I spoke firmly, like I was pushing something out with my words. And then the temperature dropped. I don't mean it felt spooky. I mean it got icy. The hallway felt normal, but inside that room, it was like someone had opened a freezer. My skin prickled. I had goosebumps all over my arms. And the dread. It was so thick it felt like I was swallowing it. After that night, I avoided my room for a while. Not forever, but long enough that it messed with my daily life. I'd sleep on the couch. I'd change clothes in the hallway. I'd do anything to minimize being in there alone. Because once your body reacts like that, once it refuses to move, you start trusting that instinct more than logic. So yeah, those are the 2 times I couldn't handle myself. And I know some people will hear this and think it's anxiety or stress or coincidence. I'm not even here to argue with anyone. I'm just telling you what it felt like. One night, something followed me past a cemetery like it had chosen me. And another night, something answered me the moment I warned someone out loud. And both times, the scariest part wasn't what I saw, because I didn't really see anything. It was how certain my body was that I was not alone. So this happened. I want to say around 6 or 7 years ago now. One of those sticky, bright summer afternoons where everything feels easy. My girlfriend at the time, Maya, our friend Eli, and I were just out walking near our place. There was this paved footpath we took a lot. On our right, this big open dog park, wide grass, a couple people tossing tennis balls, the whole wholesome scene. On our left, a thin stretch of trees that gave just enough shade to make it feel like a little tunnel for a minute. It was broad daylight, like the kind where you can see every detail. And our mood was great. We were talking about nothing important, laughing, enjoying that we should do this more often feeling. And then, this is the part where my stomach still tightens a little, even thinking about it. I glanced up the path, kind of absent-mindedly, and I saw something that didn't fit the picture. Just wrong in a quiet way. So I did that casual thing, trying not to sound dramatic, and I went, hey, do you guys see that? Like I was joking. Like it was going to be a weird sign or someone wearing something ridiculous. Both of them looked, and we all stopped walking at the exact same time. Up ahead, maybe like 30 or 40 yards away, there was this figure. Human-sized, technically, but the shape was all expanded. Like whatever it was wearing made it look too wide, too bulky, too solid. It was covered head to toe in what looked like thick, dark fabric, almost like heavy brown or black robes. No arms, no legs, no normal outline, just a big, uneven mass. And then the face, if you can even call it that. It had this huge mask, oversized. Not like a Halloween mask, more like something ceremonial, something old. The top of it rose way above where a head should be, like an extra foot or two of height. And it was wide, comically wide, like it stretched out on either side. The whole thing came down low, almost to where you'd expect a person's thighs or knees to be. We didn't even say what we were seeing out loud at first. That's what scares me when I think back, because the silence meant we all knew we were looking at the same thing. No one had to ask, "What is that?" We just stared. And then it moved. Except, moved isn't even the right word. It looked like it was dancing, like it was bobbing up and down, swaying side to side. This slow, rhythmic shifting like it was stepping from one foot to another, facing us the whole time. I remember thinking, for a split second, is this some kind of performance? Like maybe someone was messing around, or filming something, or... But nothing about it felt playful. It felt deliberate. Like it knew we were there, and it was putting on a show for us specifically. We still didn't run right away. We were frozen, honestly, trying to make our brains accept what our eyes were insisting on. And then it started coming toward us, still dancing, still doing that slow sway step like it was taking its time. Only, here's the part that flipped a switch in my body. Even though the motions were slow, it was covering distance fast, like sprint fast. Like the path between us was shrinking at an impossible rate that didn't match the movement at all. It looked like it should have been creeping forward, but it was closing in like something charging. That's when fear finally hit us all at once. Pure, instinctive panic. No conversation. No, should we go? Just the three of us turning and running like our lives depended on it. We didn't stop until we got back to our apartment. We slammed the door, locked it, and just stood there bent over, gasping, wide-eyed, trying to talk but not getting full sentences out. And the whole time, the only thing I could think was, it was daytime. We were sober. We all saw it, together. The same thing. To this day, I don't know what it was. I don't even know what explanation would make sense. But I do know this. That was the most terrified I've ever been in my life. Okay, so I heard something today that has been sitting in my chest like a stone, and I can't seem to shake it. I'm 25, and I've always been the kind of person who feels things before I can explain them. I'm not out here claiming I'm a psychic or anything, but my whole life, weird stuff has followed me. I'll walk into a place and immediately feel the tone of it. Sometimes I'll hear little things, or catch movement that doesn't make sense. At home, we've had this ongoing, I don't even know what to call it, like a mimic energy. The kind where you swear you heard your name or someone's footsteps, and then you realize you're alone. So, fast forward to this school year. I'm teaching 3rd grade at a Catholic elementary school in a rougher part of town. High stress, tough behaviors, the kind of environment where your shoulders are permanently up around your ears. And I'll be honest, the building has always felt off. Not evil exactly, just heavy, charged. There are the usual stories people whisper, like this old rumor that a sister passed away on the property decades ago, back in like the 1940s or 50s. Someone eventually tells me my classroom used to be part of the old sleeping quarters for the nuns, which is unsettling, sure, but that's not even what got me. Because I've already had little things happen in my room. A chair shifting when no one's near it, a water bottle tipping over like it got flicked. Even the class's little seasonal mascot, like one of those classroom dolls, ending up in a totally different spot when I know I put it away. And normally, I'd chalk it up to the kids messing around, or my own exhaustion, or the building settling. These students are intense. Like, I've been teaching since 2017, and I have never had a group that pushed adults to the edge like this one. I've seen teachers cry. I've cried. You start to wonder if you're failing, or if you're losing your patience, or if you're just not built for it. But then I heard this story about what happened last year, before I ever worked here, and it made everything feel not normal. So this year, the other third grade teacher was out on maternity leave, and the long-term sub, let's call her Ms. Maribel, came in to cover. 2 weeks. That's all it took. She had what everyone keeps describing as a complete break from reality. Not just overwhelmed, not just stressed. Like, she lost track of time, lost track of where she was. She started talking to things that weren't there. And the last day she was in the building, I walked past her room and she was pacing, jittery, having this full-on conversation with the mirror. Like it was responding to her. She had her kids packed up to go home. In the middle of the day. Like hours early. She couldn't process what time it was. At one point, she took them toward the cafeteria at the wrong time, and then, this part makes my stomach twist. She just left them there. Like she forgot what she was doing halfway through. Admin had to step in. She ended up hospitalized for more than a week. Everyone tried to explain it like, oh, stress, burnout, it happens. But I keep thinking, I've seen burnout. This felt like something else. Now here's the part that made my skin go cold. The staff was talking about last year, the year before I arrived. At that time, I didn't work at this school. I wasn't even in the same district. I didn't know a single person there. There was a classroom support staff member, let's call him Mr. Darius, who worked with the younger grades. One day, in the middle of the year, he had what they described as a manic, psychotic episode. But the weird part is how it started. He walked into a first grade room and insisted he needed to find third grade because he had to talk to a teacher named Ms. Rowan. Ms. Rowan, but he kept insisting. No, not Miss Klein. Miss Rowan. He was getting more agitated by the second, like he'd been given a mission and people were blocking him from completing it. So they walk him to the third grade room because he's claiming he can't find it. And when he gets there, he looks around like he's confused and offended at the same time. And he goes, "This isn't her room. This isn't Miss Rowan." Then he looks at the third grade teacher, Miss Klein, and says something like, "That's not her. That's not who I'm supposed to talk to." And the way they told it, it wasn't like he was randomly guessing. He spoke like he knew what this teacher looked like he had a picture in his mind that didn't match the person standing in front of him, like he had an expectation of what the classroom looked like, and this wasn't it. But here's the thing that's messing me up. Ms. Rowan was me. Not literally my name, obviously. I'm not using my real name here. But the way the staff told it, the description matched me. The role, the room, the exact placement. Like he was looking for the third grade teacher who didn't work there yet. And there was no other person he could have meant. No similar name, no substitute, no past staff member. He spiraled hard after that. He became physical, started screaming, had to be restrained, and at one point locked himself in a room with a student. He was terminated and hospitalized. So now I'm sitting here with this pattern. 1 year, a support staff member breaks from reality and is desperate to find a third grade teacher who doesn't exist yet, but insists he recognizes her. The next year, a long-term sub has a terrifying breakdown in the same grade band. And I'm the common thread, without even being there when it started. And now I can't stop asking myself the questions I don't even want to ask out loud. Is there something in that building that pushes people over the edge? Is it just stress and coincidence, and my mind is making a story out of it because I'm already sensitive to that other layer of reality? Or is it something else? Because if I'm being totally honest with you, when I stand in my classroom some mornings before the kids arrive, there are moments where it feels like the room is waiting, like it's holding its breath, like it recognizes me. And the thought that keeps looping is, what if Mr. Darius wasn't just confused? What if he was displaced? Like he slipped somehow, mentally, spiritually, whatever, and ended up looking for someone he'd been told to find. Someone who wasn't there yet. And if that's true, why? Was it a warning? A message? Something trying to get my attention? Or something trying to lure me into paying attention? I don't feel terrified exactly. It's more like I feel shaken awake, like the universe tapped me on the shoulder and now I can't pretend I didn't notice. And I keep going back and forth between this is trauma and stress and human brains cracking under pressure, and no, this is too specific. Because lots of people burn out, lots of people break down, but they don't usually break down while searching for a teacher who doesn't exist yet and insisting they know her. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm not saying it's demonic. I'm not saying it's a haunting. But I am saying something about this doesn't sit right in my spirit. And I can't tell if I'm being warned or being watched. So, this happened to me a little over 2 years ago, and back then, I'd never even heard the word mimic. I definitely didn't have any spooky explanation in my head at the time. I just knew something felt wrong in a way I still can't fully shake. I was 20 then, and my little sister, Maya, was 16. We'd just moved around a bit. Not far, but enough that it felt like a shift. My mom and my sister were staying in one place, and I was living with my grandparents for a while to help out, mostly because my grandpa was struggling to take care of my grandma on his own. It was in the same neighborhood we grew up in, the kind of streets where you still recognize the cracked sidewalks and the trees you used to climb. And there was this park down the road, maybe a 6-minute walk if you didn't rush. A little lake, a couple benches, a playground that always squeaked. That park was basically our whole childhood. Me, Maya, our cousins, endless afternoons there. Scraped elbows, lost baseball caps, little bike wipeouts that felt like the end of the world when you're 9. The kind of place where you've yelled someone's name 1,000 times without thinking. One afternoon, late winter I think, like March maybe, still cold enough that the air felt sharp. I was home alone doing dishes. I had headphones on, music up, just zoning out and trying to get through chores. And then I heard someone scream my name. Not like a casual, "Hey." Not like a neighbor calling from the porch. A scream from far away. The kind that makes your stomach drop before your brain even catches up. I froze, yanked one headphone off, thinking maybe I imagined it. Then I heard it again, clear as day. It was Maya's voice. No question. Same tone, same way she said my name when she was scared or hurt or mad and didn't want to admit it. And it was coming from the direction of the park. I didn't even think. I didn't stand there and weigh options. My body just moved. I dropped the sponge in the sink, left the water running, shoved my feet into my shoes, and walked out the door like I was on autopilot. And the whole time I'm walking, I'm scanning the street, looking toward the trees, the path leading down to the lake. I even called back, shouted her name, shouted my name, like, "Maya?" Just trying to get any response. Nothing. Not a word back. Not even another scream. Which somehow made it worse because it felt like whatever that was had already gotten what it wanted. Like it didn't need to keep calling once it knew I was coming. I got about halfway there, and that's when I saw my neighbor, this older woman named Tessa, getting into her car. She looked up and waved at me like it was any normal day. Just this small, ordinary moment. And that tiny wave snapped me out of it so hard it felt like waking up. Because in the same instant I thought, it can't be Maya. It's literally impossible. Maya wasn't supposed to be anywhere near here. She was hours away with my mom that day. There was no way she could be at that park, screaming my name. And as soon as my brain said that, my body reacted like it understood before I did. I got hit with this wave of nausea, hot and sudden. My throat tightened. My skin went cold, like somebody turned the lights off inside me. I stopped walking, because that's the part that haunts me. The voice wasn't just my sister's voice. It sounded like her when she was little, like 10 or 11. Like the version of her that used to chase me around that park and wipe out on her bike and yell my name like I was her lifeline. And I hated how it felt like it called me once to make me take my headphones off, and then called again to pull me outside, like it knew the steps. After that, I turned around and went back home. I didn't go to the park. I didn't check just in case. I just couldn't. My instincts were screaming that if I kept walking, I'd be doing exactly what something wanted me to do. Nothing happened after that. No more voices, no weird shadows, no footsteps. I've been back to that lake plenty of times since then, in daylight, with people. Even alone once or twice, trying to prove to myself it was nothing. But later, much later, I started hearing stories about mimics, about things that copy voices or lure people by sounding like someone they trust. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. Like, what if something had been there long enough to hear us as kids? What if it listened while we played, memorized how Maya sounded when she was little, memorized how she used to yell my name 100 times when she fell or got scared or thought she saw a wasp? Because that park holds so many echoes. We practically poured our childhood into that place. But then, there's the other side of me, the side that tries to be logical. I just moved away from my sister in this emotional way, even if not forever. Maya's had mental health struggles since she was really young, and I've always felt like I understood her better than anyone else in our family. When we were kids, I used to have these awful nightmares about her getting hurt or dying, and I'd wake up panicked and go check if she was breathing. I carried that fear for years. So sometimes I wonder if I was just primed for it. If my brain was on high alert and turned some distant sound into the exact thing that would make me run. Maybe it was just a kid in the park yelling something that kind of sounded like my name. Maybe my brain filled in the blanks. Maybe I was stressed and lonely and worried, and it all twisted together for a minute. But I've told people other weird things that have happened to me. Stuff that's creepy, stuff that's easy to laugh off later. Most of those happened in one house, in the same couple rooms, and I can talk about them like they're campfire stories. This one still catches in my throat. Because for those few minutes, I wasn't thinking about ghosts or myths or anything paranormal. I was thinking my little sister was in trouble. And something knew exactly how to make me come running.